Well, happy first day of October here for the Jordan 710 KNUS. We said goodbye to September on Friday. I fully expected to come here for a government shutdown. It didn't happen. We can talk a little bit about that as the show progresses. I will tell you that today there are pictures of afternoon lightning storms. That takes the form of a cloud with a lightning bolt with some rain shooting around in it. Morning showers tomorrow, 70 degrees. We drop down to 68 on Wednesday, but nothing is colder than the prognosticators say. Friday will be 66 degrees, mostly sunny. We are firmly within fall right now. I, of course, am not with you. I don't get to enjoy whatever is going on out there. I asked Billy what it was. He said it was tropical. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. And I said, well, I wouldn't have any idea because I'm stuck here in the big New York City, the Big Apple. Midtownish is the best way I would describe that thing, like 37th, 38th, something like that. About a mile south, if that's the right direction, from Central Park. I'm here for the show, at least the few hours I'm going to be allowed to do. And then I have to get some transportation under my feet and go down to a place called New Jersey. It's the Garden State. And in that particular state, I'm going to be giving a presentation to a whole bunch of law enforcement folks and some law people, law student people later today. So I came out early thinking that I was going to be doing nothing but the good stuff. And I did. I got a chance to do some real interesting, I don't know, stuff I had never done before. For instance, the New York Public Library. Billy, have you been out to New York City before?
Yeah, but it's been a while, quite a while.
But what is quite a while? How old were you?
It's probably been 16 years now. Yeah, 16 years.
Holy smokes. Yeah, so, it's different.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Long time.
So I went to the New York Public Library, which I'm not sure I've ever been to before. I've done all the other things, you know, the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building. Now I did the World Trade Centers back when they existed, but now the whatever that's called, One World, it's that giant tower, done all those things. But I'd never been to the New York Public Library, but it's so close to where I'm staying. I walked over there yesterday, and they have some really cool exhibits in there, like the very first Winnie the Pooh kind of handwritten notes from A.A. Milne for his son, Christopher Robin Milne, and they have a bunch of original Shakespeare stuff. They have an original Constitution draft that didn't get accepted, and it included the Bill of Rights and some of the Bills of Rights.
That's the one that has the dinosaurs in
it. You're thinking of the Bible.
Yes, I know. I thought that's what I was doing. Thank you. Appreciate you playing along.
It was something, man. I'm telling you, it was. Let me see here if I got some notes on this thing. They had one of their original proposed Bill of Rights. I'm sorry, not Bill of Rights. Part of the Constitution, I think, maybe it was Bill of Rights, was Article 2. It said no law these are amendments to the Constitution, not the Bill of Rights. No law varying the compensation for the services of senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives has intervened, which means you can't vote yourself a pay raise and enjoy it until the voters say you get to go back. Yeah, but so here's what happens. It does not get made part of the original amendments to the Constitution. However, it's the latest one we have now, 1992. It finally became adopted and ratified, a couple 100+ years later.
Yeah.
But it seems like these folks are kind of smart in what they were doing. And then the first one that didn't get adopted was one, and it's kind of cool to see it in the handwriting. And you think to yourself, these dudes were writing these things out? Like, what? My handwriting is atrocious. I just don't know how it could work.
Yeah, I like how genius they were about the pay raises, because they knew that getting that many people together, the only two things you're gonna get any group that large to agree on is let's raise our pay or go on vacation. That is the only thing. They knew that. They were very smart to understand.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. So I had plans, and I had told people. In fact, a couple friends texted me over the weekend and said, "Hey, listen, I've listened to the show. Did you get your 20 miles in?"
Yes.
The answer is no. And let me tell you the story about that quickly, because, when you want to go to the library, anything, I wanted to go to the library. This is before that.
Yeah.
So, you're looking for signs from God that you shouldn't do something constantly, especially when it's something you're not really sure you should be doing to begin with. And in this particular case, it took the form of two things. one, I was going to run around Central Park, which isn't 20 miles, but you could find a way to do inside and outside loops and stuff and get a bunch of miles in there. But they ran the New York City Triathlon yesterday morning. Who knew that was coming?
You could have joined.
To that.
You could have joined. You could have just jumped in line and just ran with them. And could have just done the running part. Who would have noticed?
Yeah. It was one of those things, too, where you add on top of that Pulaski Day.
What's that?
Exactly.
What?
Pulaski Day is the day that they celebrate Polish heritage out here.
Oh.
So right in front of the library that I was trying to get to, they had closed off blocks. And I mean, for hours. This thing started before I got up and continued until after I left the library, right before it closed at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
So this thing went on, and you see thousands and thousands of, I think they're New Yorkers, but they could be people traveling here for it, wearing red shirts, various combinations of white and red. They have the Polska shirt on with the seal of the country and all the emblem of the country and all this. And it was nuts. This parade went on forever. They had like fire departments from Connecticut drove down to be in this thing. And some place called Garfield, New Jersey has been in the parade since 40 or something. Anyway, tons and tons of Polish people. Not the place to tell Polish jokes, by the way. If you were thinking about doing that, not a really good place to do that.
I was actually thinking of telling the joke that it's going to be great because they're going to hold the parade today. So, sorry. Yeah,
it was hugely attended. It was pretty cool, but nonetheless, trying to get it was between me and the library.
Yeah,
and so all of the streets are shut down. And I'm like, well, what the hell? How am I supposed? So I came up to a couple of New York's finest, who, by the way, were getting paid apparently to stand out there and sweat. They weren't really doing anything. And wave one guy over, and he's like, oh, you got to go up to 42nd Street. You got to go up to 42nd Street. So I drag I ran 9 miles yesterday, around the park, up to the park, but I didn't get the rest. So I go up there, and that too is blocked off. They're only going to let people cross every night. I don't know. It was just, there was backed up people forever. No. And then they finally let everybody march across the thing. Getting into the library turned out to be like the opposite of Escape from New York. It was like Escape to the Library. It was, there were so many people, so much stuff. Watch dudes. By the way, I don't know what homeless issue they have. I did run into some homeless, but dudes just standing there right on 37th, just traffic backed up forever.
Yeah.
Right in between 2 cars parked on the shoulder, and just pulls it out and just takes a good minute-long whiz right there on the street.
Geez.
Just like, what in the world? Other dudes, that heroin must be a big issue out here, because a lot of guys doing that kind of heroin sleep thing.
Yeah,
a couple others who had come out of their stupor long enough to do the heroin-related rocking, that you see. And I thought, good grief, buddy, what is going on here?
Oh, that's awful. That's awful to see.
But New York was awesome.
Yeah.
I thought to myself for a moment, am I going to go to the Jets game? I'd love to see my friend Taylor Swift. I know she's there to support her pretend boyfriend, Travis Kelce.
Heard she said hi.
Yeah, but I didn't end up going. I did go to a restaurant that she had been to within the last 2 weeks. You only know that because when you get there, you hear people saying she had been there within the last 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it. You know, she was here last 2 weeks.
Who tracks the restaurants that these people go to?
I mean, the fans. The fans do. Oh, boy, they are.
She lives out here. I didn't know. But Central Park was beautiful. A lot of people who have a lot of interesting habits. I think we could do an entire show on you may be a tool if, and that is when you're on a path that goes around the Jackie Onassis Reservoir. And it's nice. It's a nice path. It can accommodate probably 4 or 5 people across, shoulder to shoulder.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean if you're a group of 4 or 5, you should walk shoulder to shoulder. I mean, there are people coming up, and you see this everywhere. You see this. I watched 2 clowns on my way at the airport. 2 clowns. These are 2 buddies who are walking at a pace that made you think they're going to their death, and they know it, right? Like they're in no rush to get there. And they're shoulder to shoulder, and you can't get around them because they're dragging their bags. There's other people coming by, and I'm like, and then they get on the little people mover, the one that, and they got to stand right next to each other because God forbid the dude have to either pause a conversation about, and that's when I realized the paint had really dried.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That conversation, or just take a moment and maybe talk to him from behind, which no jokes there. But so instead, these two clowns still ahead of me as I'm trying to maneuver around them, get to the escalators. There's dual escalators. Do they get on the same or similar steps of the same escalator? No. Each one dominates an escalator down so that they can continue to look at each other longingly with their, I don't know why I'm on this planet vacant look, and just continue to mouth words where I'm just, this is insane. Like there's something wrong with people. Like nobody cares if you continue your conversation. Everybody cares if they get to their destination. So prioritize. I'm sensitive to that the whole time. Then we get down, everybody gets down, pours into the train. And I'm going from like B to A. I'd gotten there a little bit early. I went to the United Lounge. It doesn't exist on B. So I had to go to A. So I'm on the train. Some guy gets on who clearly having a rough day.
Yeah.
Just a rough day. And he gets on and like right in front of the door. And that's okay. So then it goes from B to A. Most people are expecting people only to get on between B. And I get that. So I'm standing there and I'm like, hey, sir, pardon me. And he just stands there. No acknowledgement. I'm like, hey, sir, I got to get off this thing. Nothing.
Yeah.
So I brush by him. And then it turns into, don't brush by me. Don't brush. I'm like, what's the other people in the train are looking around like, what are we? I think they were getting ready to go for phones. Like, is this going to be viral? Like, I'm like, well, dude, whatever happened in your life, I'm sorry. I'm sure there's a pill for it or something. But the whole travel trip out here, the flight was great. But getting there, I was just like, sweet God. The other one is people that talk on their cell phone. This happens at, I'm demonstrating here for the Rumbles and the YouTubes.
That's nice.
They hold it up to their mouth like they're about to lick a plate. Do you know what I mean? And they hold it up and they're talking and the speaker is going and you can now hear their conversation as they're like, I'm over by the frozen peas.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's when Judy said, rectum damn near killed him or something. And I'm like, when did this seem appropriate? Like, when did that kind of cell phone etiquette seem appropriate?
You don't understand how the etiquette has changed and you don't
I'm missing it.
Yeah, you don't fully appreciate it. That what happens is when you are in public now and you have the phone on speaker and you're having a conversation where everybody else can hear, they are actually asking you to join in. At least that's how I take it, because I will join in. I got no problem with that one. I will absolutely add to the conversation 110%. In fact, I will go out of my way to join your conversation. Just because. And the reason is you're doing this in public. If you wanted to have a private conversation, have a private conversation.
There's a way to do it.
You want to have a public conversation? I am more than happy to participate. I will say hello to people on the other line. I will talk about what someone is wearing. Just walk over and go, she thought it was good to come out with the Crocs today going to the store. And I'm not so certain about this. What do you think about this? The other one is, or if Judy, and Judy was doing this. And I'm like, I think Judy's up. Yeah. And I will be happy to join the conversation.
Maybe
I got
that's
no
the
problem
direction
with that.
this has to go. That's far more creative.
Oh, I have no problem. In fact, I embarrassed my family to no end one time in a restaurant with someone doing that. And then afterwards, 2 tables came over and said, thank you very much for doing that.
Oh, that's great.
You finally shut her up. I'm like, yes, I did. Yeah.
That's a good one. The other corollary to that are some of the people who are running around Central Park. And man, there's a lot of people that run around Central Park.
You want to trip them?
That like refuse to put in this modern invention called Bluetooth headphones or corded ones.
Oh yeah.
And they just want to play their music for you as they trot by.
They're sharing. That's what they think it is.
They're sharing. I love shares, but I'm like, why does this seem appropriate?
Yeah.
Like if everyone else made the same choice you made, it would be noise chaos, right?
Yeah.
It would just be white noise.
Yeah. There are a couple of younger people in the neighborhood that they do that. There's a couple of them that go when they're walking around, they've always got their theme music playing, and then a couple of them on their bikes. And so a couple of things. I either will dance along or I will comment on their music choice. And it may be a positive comment. It might be a negative comment. But again, if we are sharing, I feel that, that to ignore that critique. Yeah, to ignore that would be rude. I think they're asking for it. That, it's kind of a social thing. So I figured that if I do not participate in what they obviously are doing is a public act, it would not be nice. I
need to do that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be. it would be fulfilling my social responsibility. I figure, but that's just what goes on in my head.
Billy, I have ranted aimlessly about nothingness,
Yeah,
and I haven't
nicely done.
asked, did you get to have a weekend off from the radio, or have you just been...
Oh, I love when you do the jokes. That's fantastic. My favorite.
No, you did a little bit of radio.
No, yeah, I did a lot. I did 3 shows over the weekend. So it was a relatively smaller weekend lift. It was good. My son turned 24 on Friday.
Happy birthday.
So yeah, that was nice.
But you did something special.
We were going out to dinner, and that was weird because we went out towards the Southlands area, and there is a Mexican restaurant that we really wanted to go to. We've been wanting to go to it for a while.
Is it called Chili's?
No, I forgot what it's called. It's what is it called? It's got I don't know. My wife knows the name, and we've been wanting to go there, and we get there, and they're like, it's an hour wait.
Oh,
like there's no way. Yeah, there's no way we're doing that one. So we went to a different restaurant that was literally just right across the parking lot, and we're there. And like 15 minutes after we're in the other restaurant, we get the little notice from the other place going, "Hey, your table's ready." And we're like, "That was like 22 minutes. We could have hung 22 minutes, but you said 55,
buddy.
So we weren't doing 55. Sorry. So we missed that. Yeah, we missed that one, but it was nice. It was a nice little, just had dinner, and it was nice.
You weren't part of the shooting, of course.
No, we weren't, which is good. That was thankful. Then my son.
But the other special thing that you told me about that you were going to do during the day for your son. Remember?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I went over. Yeah, I had lunch with him during the day. Yeah,
I brought lunch. But it was.
Yeah, I brought lunch over to his school where he works, which is kind of cool.
I thought that was the coolest thing, man.
I try to do that. That's one of the gifts of this schedule. Has allowed me to show up with the kids on their birthdays at school in order to have lunch with them. They're not as happy about that during high school. Normally, I just have to drop it off then. But middle school, I actually sat in the cafeteria, which was kind of cool. So, and I always made sure that when I did, I would show up with a T-shirt or a jacket or something that would have a reference to music that the kids would know. And so it's always that conversation starter afterwards, and the kids walk up and go, "How come your dad's wearing a 21 Pilots shirt?" They're like, he knows the band. Yeah, so those things were, so that type of an idea. So that's kind of cool. He went and did some stuff with my mom on Friday night. They went to Fairmount Cemetery and did a haunted tour where they looked at a lot of the grave sites and older things, which is kind of cool. That was something they wanted to do. And she got him a really nice beer stein. Other than that, fairly quiet over the weekend. Some stuff with the Snakes, stuff with soccer. My team won. My son's team barely won. Craziest match. And if you were here, I'd show you some of it. But my brother's team, Tottenham, played Liverpool, and that game was crazy. That was nuts. It ended up where 2 players from Liverpool got tossed off the pitch. So they're playing 9 on 11 for most of the second half. And Liverpool somehow holds it together. And then in the final 2 minutes of injury time, Tottenham has a cross, and one of the Liverpool defenders, Juan Matip, makes a mistake and redirects the ball into his own goal. So Liverpool had held strong the entire time. And then within the last 120 seconds, they make a mistake that gives Tottenham the win. Now, it's embarrassing because Tottenham should have pounded them based on being 2 players up. But it was an insane game. And I could not, the tactical genius of Jurgen Klopp, who's the coach of Liverpool, is astonishing. I mean, they spanked my Newcastle team when we were a man up earlier this season and made me very angry, but he was tactically brilliant, and he did it again. This was one of those where you sit back, if you understand how soccer works, to watch what they did, that it was a masterclass in watching how the team continued to perform. That was absolutely wonderful. And then watched a little bit of CU. That was crazy. What do you think about that one?
Buddy.
CSU. It looked like that one stomped, and then wow. Yeah,
I know. I had to follow it on our Friends Across the Street station while I was monitoring on ESPN.
Across the street TV, because you don't have a TV and you had to look through the window.
No. Okay. But I ended up being at the Guggenheim.
Wow.
So I was trying to take in as much of New York as possible. And listen, I want to watch the Buffs. I want to watch the Broncos. But it felt like if all I'm doing is I'm out of town early to take in a city and I'm just sitting at a bar watching the game, I'm like, I could do that anywhere for less money. But I'm following it, and the Guggenheim, as it turns out, not a place you cheer out loud.
Oh, really? You found that out?
Because there was times where I'm like, we're walking around the Young Korean art exhibit or whatever they have, and I'm doing this thing. I'm like, yeah. People are looking around. I'm like, oh, damn it, I had one of those moments,
where like he really likes the artist.
Like, oh, look at that.
He's appreciating this art on a level I'm not. What is he doing?
Just as an aside, they have part of first off, the Guggenheim's going under some significant restoration. So the little, if you're familiar with it, there's like a ramp that goes circular up several floors, 4 or 5 floors, and it has art all along the wall. It's kind of the iconic part of the Guggenheim. But they have a collection of paintings, and I'm talking about Renoir, Picasso, Manet, Monet, Van Gogh. I mean, just all that stuff. And I look at that, I'm blown away by what these guys were able to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you go into the Young Korea exhibit. I'm going to describe one for you, Billy.
Yeah.
It is it's some kind of a thing on the ground where someone put a bowl. They surrounded the bowl with what appears to me to be flour or some white powdery substance. It could be Korean cocaine. I don't know.
Okay.
They then tethered a chicken to the something near the bowl. And then as the chicken walks into and out of the white powder, it leaves marks in and around the area. And there's a series of pictures. Now, the chicken's gone from the exhibit, but you see all the marks. And then you see pictures of the chicken in various stages of walking through this thing. And the description of this is like, this very well could be a metaphor for the very brutal regime of such and such that cracked down on individual rights. And now the individual is also gone from the I'm like, what? Come on. This is not art. And I think the conclusion I've come to is, if I can make it, it's not art. Do you know what I mean?
I love that.
It's not art. There was at one point there was a stack of rocks.
Yeah.
And then a TV. You got to picture this, a TV in between rocks, like stacks of rocks. The TV's in the middle of this stack. And on the TV screen are 2 other similar rocks. So it looks like it's an unending stream of rocks, and I'm like, see, I can make that.
Yeah,
that's not art.
Yeah,
that's not art.
That is too easy.
Art is when I look at it and say things like, how did you just take a whole bunch of colors, seemingly, splot them onto this canvas, and now I see stuff, right? Like I can see that dude and the sunrise and the this and that. I mean, that to me is art.
Yeah.
The Korean stuff, no offense at all. This isn't an ethnic thing at all. You could say this about any art. This isn't about Korean art. If I can make it, it is not art. And that was just about every exhibit. One exhibit, Billy, was an old school TV with that old school kind of look to it in terms of the screen. And it's a picture of a bottle of Coca-Cola, empty, with 3 empty glasses equally spaced next to it. That was it. That was the entire exhibit. And they go out of their way to torture an explanation for it. And I'm like, what? No, how do you know that?
Yeah, like, that's true.
What?
Yeah, if you kind of have to explain it, so you kind of lose the impact. Yeah.
But that's my way of saying I ended up watching or listening to the game while I was going around the Korea exhibit. Nice. It was the only good relief. I thought, man, for a moment we were going to do this. I'm like, this will be one of the most epic comebacks in NCAA history, certainly for the CU Buffs. And then the onside kick didn't work out.
That's okay. And I'm still distracted. I wonder what happened to the chicken. Sorry, the whole time you're talking.
Oh, good question.
Where is the chicken?
You know what? If I had to guess,
and was he delicious?
That's what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking.
That's what I'm really thinking.
Is he showed up in some kind of kimchi pot of something? I don't know what else is going on.
Circle
there,
of life. That's okay. Yeah.
But apparently the Korean art thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe we should get into art.
Maybe. I feel like I've missed my calling. I can have things walk around in white powder.
What it seems to me is it's all in the explanation.
Yeah.
You could throw a bunch of garbage together. One dude stretched out the same kind of canvas over 12 separate squares, all equally shaped, equally spaced. And a couple of them are starting to fray. And so the explanation is the fraying should signify the blah, blah. I'm like, how do you know that?
Yeah, no.
I don't look at that and see a fraying society or anything. I'm like, I look at this and think, this took like an hour.
Yeah, exactly. how is this a thing?
A staple gun, some burlap,
yeah,
and some stuff you bought at Michael's, and then that's not art. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, and on the CU Buff side, I was again not a I like CU, didn't go there, so I don't have as much in the game as you do, but it was nice to see that they performed so well, and to be literally within a touchdown is a lot of respect, because I felt like after what happened in Oregon. There was a lot of trash talking about, oh, CU is just a pretender. Oh, Coach Prime, just a pretender. No. This is against USC, and they were able to keep it within a touchdown. And if you want to talk about the gulf in talent, top to bottom between the two programs and look at what he's been able to do. Now, just wrap your mind around what happens when some of the larger high-profile recruits, and we got a number of them, but they start coming to CU. What happens when Coach Prime is able to compete on a talent level with some of these larger schools? This just got interesting. This is the first time watching Prime. I mean, the TCU game was a surprise. CSU was good. Oregon is what we expected. This, to me, was the first time that I'm like, okay, we may have something here. We may have something very special if we can get them to stick around.
If these guys could not start so slowly, and I say that in this way, if you look at the Oregon scores, we played them straight up in the second half. Played them straight up, hit point for point. In this USC game, we crushed them in the second half. It's like, okay, we're winning halves. We've got to put it all together and win the other two quarters.
Yeah, you need to. So that was good. And then we got a win for the Broncos, too, which was a surprise.
Okay, now that was another one I did not get to watch live. I was walking around the New York Library with my phone.
Yes.
Walking around here and there and looking at this thing. And there's nobody else there. It's a Broncos fan. It's a mix of all the Polish supporting people and every other normal person. But when it was 28, at one point, 28-7, I thought, my God, this is going to end up being the Rockies, and they ended their season yesterday, 103 wins in the red. I thought, oh my God, and so I put it in my pocket. I walk around, I read some A.A. Milne stuff, and I pull it out again, and I'm like, it's 28-28. What happened? So I'm scrolling through. I'm like, why did I turn this off? And I really did it because I didn't want to cry in New York, but I look back and I'm like, holy smokes, man, they got a score. They got a fumble recovery. So now I'm on it. And then the rest of the game. And I thought, I don't know how we shut down Fields. I'm just glad we did. That dude had a heck of a game.
Yeah, he did.
But to win, I just don't know how to feel about it. Like, I'm excited we didn't lose, but we just scraped by a win against one of the two worst teams in the NFL. We're the other one.
Oh, yeah, we are. And the funny thing is there were stories going out, and this is mostly in the Chicago Bears area, in the outside reaches of their broadcast area. Several of the CBS affiliates were asking CBS if they could run the Dolphins-Bills game instead of the Bears-Broncos game. They didn't want to run. Yeah, and this is
actually,
in
that
the
would
Bears
be a much
coverage.
Better game.
It is a much better game. That's why we're asking. The TV stations were like, no, can we please show a better game? Can we please have this better game? And that was interesting. But it was in the outside region of where the Chicago Bears reach was. I was reading some of the media out of Chicago yesterday because I like to do that. I always like to see what their flavor is going into these type of contests. And there was a guy writing about so some of the TV stations in the Bears broadcast region don't want to run the Bears game, and so he was throwing rocks at the team and saying, how bad is it? Yeah, they're like, Bears used to be dominant, and he goes back to the Ditka days and things, and then talks about what went on with their Super Bowl winning team, and so he was doing his walk down memory lane, and it was basically a lament of how far their storied franchise has fallen. And so I'm reading that going, I feel you, my friend. I mean, I felt like I was reading something that he could have just supplanted Broncos in there, and I could have been reading many of the same things. So I thought that was interesting.
Honestly, as you were mentioning, I'm like, I'd like to see the Dolphins-Bills.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, although still, best thing in the world. And so we watched the game in the morning, and then the best thing in the world is, of course, we did Red Zone. We slipped to Red Zone when you do commercials during the Broncos game. Red Zone all afternoon, and that's just fantastic. So yeah, that is the absolute way to watch football.
Absolute way to do Monday radio, by the way, is to make sure that we cut away with you having, my God, any amount of time. So that
I know we should probably step aside here.
Which is the Thorpe Report and the You Choose the News. We're going to get back on track here when we come back. Stick around. It's George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. Welcome back, 710 KNU, and happy Monday to you. Me, live from New York. You still live right there from wherever you're at in the Colorado listening world. It's that time of the show where we got to turn it over for the legit stuff. It's also tends to be a little depressing, but nonetheless, we have to do it. It's an order of the Salem administration. William with the Thorpe Report.
Yes, sir. Good morning. As our weather change is slowly moving our way, our next system is going to bring a chance for a few isolated storms along with much cooler temperatures later in our week. Today, partly sunny, windy, warmer, high at 82. Tomorrow, it's going to be cooler. Chances of isolated storms in the afternoon. 70 degrees will be our high, partly cloudy, cooler, and a chance of storms throughout the days on Wednesday, and a high of only 66. A 15-year-old boy was shot outside Southlands Mall, later died on Saturday evening. Shooting was reported around 8:30 p.m. It was in a parking lot outside of the mall where a large group of people, including teens from Smoky Hill and Grandview High Schools, were celebrating homecoming. Employees from Mount Fuji Sushi and Hibachi restaurant ushered some teens and some witnesses who fled from the gunshots, and they locked the doors afterwards. Lots of the restaurants were on a lockdown for a short amount of time. Police said the teen was transported to a local hospital where he later died. Investigators are searching for several suspects who left the scene in a vehicle. No other identifying information available. They believe the murder occurred during a pre-planned meeting between the two parties. Police in Denver are investigating a double shooting near Regis University that happened early on Sunday. 2 gunshot victims transported to the hospital, unknown extent of injuries. Happened around 3 a.m. in the 3300 block of West Regis Boulevard. Also, police in Aurora are now investigating a death after a man was found shot to death in a car early Sunday morning, located in the 500 block of Potomac Street. When officers arrived, they found a deceased adult male in the driver's seat of the car, gunshot wounds. No other information. Investigation is ongoing, and they're looking for witnesses. Crews also recovered a body after a man went missing in Chatfield Reservoir Sunday afternoon around 9:30 in the evening. Colorado Parks and Wildlife reported that their body had been recovered from the reservoir. Identity is going to be released later on once they notify next of kin. Fire department received a call about the incident around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. Report was a man who was paddleboarding, went into the water, and then never resurfaced. They did bring out the dive teams to search the reservoir. An investigation is underway for a fatal shooting that took place near the Wadsworth RTD station on Saturday. Lakewood Police Department said agents were called to West 13th Avenue and Yukon Street. In front of the Wadsworth RTD station platform, one person found with a gunshot wound taken to the hospital. That victim later died. Police said a suspect was arrested in relation to the shooting, not saying if it was the shooter or not. They believe it was an isolated incident, no further threat to the public. Also, Fort Collins man went to Rocky Mountain National Park on Wednesday, September 27th, and nobody has seen him since. The National Park Service said search efforts for Chad Halansich are ongoing. The 38 search team members and 17 others went looking for him around multiple areas over the weekend. They have not seen a sight of him yet. The Broncos looked like they were the worst team in football, but yes, something happened yesterday, and we rallied from a 21 point deficit for an improbable 31-28 victory at Soldier Field. So, yeah, that was good news yesterday. That's all the news that I've got.
Buddy, that's great. Perfect timing. Gives us a chance to come back. We can even play sound and get an advertiser in.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I know you've been working really hard to get them to come in, and I think it's turned out well. Let's do this. I don't want to screw around anymore because we'll start on a thread that'll take up like 3 or 4 minutes. Folks, stick around. This is the good part of the show. We're going to be able to spend a little more time than we normally would on it, which is the best. It's going to be You Choose the News. Until then, it's George Brauchler on 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. If you're looking to elevate your home space with timeless beauty of granite, marble, quartz, fill in the blank, look no farther. It's the art of granite. That's our buddy Mitch Floria. He's the owner. He's got a professional staff of long-term employees. They're there to provide you the best product. I've been telling you about Mitch for a long, long time now. Here's the deal. He'll work within your budget. He gives you the wholesale prices, and the extra kicker just for listening to this show, but you got to tell him you listen to this show, is that if you mention us, you receive the bathroom countertop 4FREE free with the purchase of your new kitchen countertop package, or you get the kitchen or bathroom sink for free with the purchase of any countertop package. And I got to explore this with Mitch, Billy, maybe when we get him back on, but I got to know if that applies to the finished basement too, because more and more I see friends and neighbors who are finishing their basement and they're putting a little wet bar in there, like it's safer to drink underneath the house or something like that. Maybe that's it, but this guy will do it for you. You got to give him a call, 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919. That rings the phone on his hip. You can also check him out at theartofgranite.com. It's theartofgranite.com. Without any further ado, it is time for You Choose the News.
Yes, sir. It is that time of the morning where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. We have scoured the interwebs throughout the entire weekend to find really stupid stories about us humans, giving them even dumber headlines to play this fake radio news game because they continue to pay us for it, and we are just as concerned and confused as you are. Alrighty, sir. Here are your headlines this morning. Customer support to the rescue. Jump around, Parasite Edition. Beating the charges left a song in my heart. And beware the atomic wedgie. Alrighty, your choices yet again are customer support to the rescue. Jump around, Parasite Edition. Beating the charges left a song in my heart. And beware the atomic wedgie. Your choice.
Well, I think I lived through this one. Let's beware the atomic wedgie.
Yes, beware the atomic wedgie. At least that should be the warning from the House of Mouse from now on. There is a lawsuit that has been recently filed in Orange County, Florida by Emma and Edward McGinnis. They are seeking $50,000 in damages from their visit to Disney World in 2019. You see, it was Emma's 30th birthday. And she was frolicking, I say frolicking, at Disney World's water park, where she decided to go down the Humunga Cowabunga water slide.
What?
Yes, it consists of 3 tubes totaling 214 feet in length, and the ride ends with a nearly 5-story plummet in the dark at about 40 miles per hour into the pool. Well, on the day, Emma was wearing her favorite one-piece bathing suit when she embarked on that fateful trip, and she did not heed the safety protocols given to her by Disney. And as she went down the final near 5-foot story drop, she got an atomic wedgie that has left her injured and scarred.
No way.
Yes, that basically when she reached the bottom of the slide, the water had pressed the suit into places that were muy uncomfortable. And now she was suing because she said you shouldn't have to do that. And they said, no, we told you to keep your legs closed and some other reasons going down there. And yeah. And she said she didn't. And so now she's suing them because of it. Yeah,
it feels like they ought to have pictures of the atomic wedgie.
Yes, I know. So, all
right.
I
say that because like even at airborne school, if they tell you take rings off your hands before you jump, they also put posters of dudes who didn't. And the finger is like a sleeve, man.
Yeah.
And it's pulled right off the bone.
Takes all the skin off. Yeah.
And you see that and you go, I think I'm going to take the rings off.
I'll probably do this. All right. Customer support to the rescue. Jump around, Parasite Edition, or beating the charges left a song in my heart.
Beating the charges.
Beating the charges left a song in my heart. Yes, we are learning about Jaden Morea, formerly known as Dan Sheeran, because he changed his name after 2019 when he was charged with murdering his girlfriend, Brianna Robinson. Now, Brianna died in late 2013. She fell from the 11th floor balcony of his home. The Gold Coast Titans cheerleader death was ruled a suicide, but then a police investigation decided to charge Dan with murder. But just recently, charges were dropped. And Dan changed his name to Jaden and said that has left a song in his heart. So he now is going to soon debut his new musical called Through the Eyes of Love. It's a 100-page musical where the main character, strangely enough, goes through an incident almost exactly like Mr. Dan Sheeran. However,
like the girl
it is
fell.
Not a murder mystery. He is not guilty, but he does go through it. And yeah, he relives the whole thing and goes through. Yeah.
So she really did fall. She wasn't pushed.
At least according to the musical. I'm just saying, leave that open to interpretation. So we'll see what happens.
Great.
Yeah. All righty. Final choice this morning. Customer support to the rescue or jump around, Parasite Edition.
Jump around.
Jump around. Yes,
Jump
that is
up,
the
jump up.
And Get Down. That is the famous House of Pain song. But now it is being taken with more of a penchant for parasites. The dreaded rat lungworm can now get into your brain. It is a parasite with a penchant for rats and slugs that occasionally now finds itself rambling and writhing around in human brains, and it has firmly established itself in the southeast portion of the United States. A study involved a small-scale surveillance of dead rats in the Atlanta Zoo between 2019 and 2022, and researchers continually turned up evidence of the brainworm. It identified that 7 out of 33 collected rats were infected, and they have seen it jump across into humans. So, yes, stop picking up and licking the rats because they can give you rat lung room, which then climb into your brains and you get live brain worms. There was a woman most recently that she had a problem. She was having a brain problem. They went inside and they found one of them alive inside of her cranium.
No, you only do the dead
living
brain
inside
worms.
of there.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I know.
Do the live one.
Yeah, but again, live brain worms. Yeah, in the eastern United States. So I'm just saying, George, when you're traveling around, no more licking the rats. Just because.
I don't do that. I did that in Southeast Asia, but not here.
Yeah, not here.
In the States.
Well, that is it. Unfortunately, we don't have time for an advertiser because our music is just about to kick in. Oh, so George, we don't get paid today. So that's, in other words, it's just a day that ends in Y.
Stupid. How much time do we have, man?
You've got 22 seconds from now.
Well, listen, here's what we're going to do. And I apologize for hosing us out of the special advertiser. Listen, retail theft, it's surging. Somebody named DJT has a solution for it. I do want to talk to you about it on some other things when we come back. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. It's hour 2 of 4. At 10 o'clock, we get replaced by Charlie Kirk. At 11, Dennis Prager. 1 o'clock, Seb Gorka. Then live and local, Deb Flora, 3 to 4. And get him while you can, Stefan Tubbs, from 4 to 7 p.m. As you know, Stefan has announced he is going to retire sometime within the next 10 years. So get in while you can on some of these last shows. We could be entering the last full month of Stefan's time as a radio host. So if you were ever going to do something to get on Stefan's radar, ask him a question he's never been asked before, typically one about math or anything like that. Now's your chance. Listen to that show. Now, we have on with us this morning. She was nice enough to get out of bed or wherever it was. She fell asleep last night in time to talk on the phone. It's one of our favorites. It's Sherrie Peif. Sherrie, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, George. Thanks for having me as always.
Dare we ask where you ended up last night? I know it was a Sunday night, so.
I was at home.
Oh, well, I was, for a minute there, I thought it was going to be, it looks like I'm in a field somewhere, or something like that, which would be awesome.
Yeah. No, I'm still okay. I'm at home.
Hey, did you follow at all the events of this past Saturday at the state GOP Central Committee meeting down there at the Rock in Castle Rock?
Oh, I was there all day, voting member and all. Yep, I was there from about 7:30 on.
First, if you don't mind, Sherrie, would you please set the stage for what was at stake? We talked a little bit about this last week with the proposed rule change, whatever that was, number 9 or something. But can you set the stage and then tell us what happened while you were there?
Yeah, so what was at stake was the sanity of the Colorado Republican Party, to be honest. There was, obviously, the opt-out vote has been the most talked about thing in the Colorado Republican Party for the last 2 election cycles now. They've tried to put in this rule that allows the Republican Party to opt out of the state primaries and thereby disregarding all of the unaffiliated vote in the state of Colorado. I'm not in favor of the unaffiliated vote in our primaries. I've said that hundreds of times. But that being said, by opting out 2 years ago, they would have disregarded about 900,000 Republican votes from the primary with the way the caucus and assembly system works. This time around, they proposed a couple of different methods, one of which would basically have had the Colorado Republican Party running its own primary. They would have been responsible for 900,000 plus ballots, and every Republican in the state would have been allowed to vote in it, no unaffiliated, but it would have been the Republican Party that would have been managing that. And interestingly
did you see that proposal in detail, Sherrie?
I did, yeah. It was actually included with our bylaws.
Did it include, dang it, I wish I'd have had that last week. Did it include the method by which they were going to do that? Because when we had D-Will on, David Williams, the state GOP chair, a couple weeks ago, he'd suggested that one of the ways they would do that is electronic voting.
And that's exactly where I was getting ready to go. I was going to say, and ironic, no, that's okay. No, you're fine. I was going to say, ironically, the very people who wanted this to pass are the same people who have been screaming since the 2020 election that they don't want electronic voting. They don't want to be hooked up to the internet. They want paper ballots. 2 years ago at the state convention, they fought for hundreds and hundreds of people to vote by paper ballot. But this go around, they wanted people to, hey, upload your driver's license to the internet so that we can validate it and make sure that we're really voters, and then cast the ballot through the internet, cast the ballot through email. It was an electronic format by the very same people who have been screaming that is room for error. So,
I gotta believe that even that method, it just begs for some kind of corruption.
Oh, it has to. I mean, and how many people want to upload? I mean, I'm going to start with, there's no way I would upload my driver's license to the internet. It's just not going to happen. I mean, and you're talking, these are people who are police officers, district attorneys, people who normally and otherwise are what they call confidential voters. who, when you go to, when you go to try to find voters on lists, don't have addresses and phone numbers listed. But now we're going to ask them to upload their driver's license to the internet?
Right.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So that was the method by which they were going to do. That's what was we were going into on Saturday, because you have to have, if this were to pass, it would only pass for one election cycle. You would have to do this every single election cycle in order for it to pass. So their thought process was, there was only one statewide election in 2024, and that's for CU region at large. So this would be a great year to test it out. But there are 64 county assemblies, and there are 8 congressional district assemblies by which we would have to have nominated all 65 state House seats and about half of the 35 Senate seats and all the county commissioner and clerk and sheriff offices across the state.
So, okay, so this thing shows up. One of the things that we saw was that the rule change they proposed was, we're now going to count abstentions as going with the majority. Was there any discussion of that?
So, yeah, and it was actually worse than just abstentions. Not only were they going to count any abstentions as going with the majority of the party, there was a rule in there about changing the way proxies were handled. And those proxies, prior to the meeting on Saturday, you could carry as many proxies, or what they call whole votes now, as you wanted. The meeting rules changed that to where you could only carry 3. But you're credentialed in under the old meeting rules, which means you could carry as many as you wanted. So in theory, you could credential in 6 people, 6 whole votes, and meeting rules pass, and you only get to vote 3 of those. So the 3 that didn't get to be voted then became also casted with the majority.
Well, wait a minute. Didn't those 3 though? How did they do that? Those aren't even abstentions.
But they were credentialed. They did that through the meeting rule that said, changed meeting rule 9 as well, also changed the definition of a total voting member.
Okay.
Rather than being, or a total membership, rather than total membership being all voting members of the GOP, it was all credentialed members at the meeting. So when you credentialed in 6 voting members, but then rule number 25 took away 3 of those from you. But those members still credentialed in, and meeting rule 9 said all non-casted votes by credentialed members would side with the majority. So, I called the chairman the day I got the meeting rules. I sent him a text message and I said, you need to call me. I need to have a conversation with you. He called me almost immediately, to his credit, and he asked what I needed, and I told him I needed him to stop giving me heartburn. And when we talked about these two rules and how they worked together, his answer to me was, well, let's hope that everybody reads the meeting rules. Sherrie?
Who said that?
Dave Williams. When I asked him how he planned to reconcile this, he said, let's hope everybody reads the meeting rules, Sherrie. So how they ended up reconciling it was this. They voted, or they credentialed in everybody. Well, first of all, we worked really hard to make sure that everybody knew not to bring more than 2 proxies or have more than 3 votes, period. There were people on the no side that reached out to everybody in all 64 counties and said, please don't bring more than 3 proxies. Because if you bring more than 3 proxies, here's what's going to happen. So I think we got most of the people in the state, because when they were going through a standing vote one time where they actually had to count, it appeared that nobody had more than 3 votes. So I think that worked out for us. But that being said, how they reconciled it was, we all credentialed in, and then these were supposed to be amendments to the state bylaws. Rather than passing the meeting rules, they brought 2 amendments forward first. We voted in the 2 amendments under the old set of rules, which included an amendment changing the proxies, and then they voted in the meeting rules. So they changed the protocol, they changed the order of the way the meeting is ran, and these two amendments that we did prior to voting on meeting rules both passed. Now, I will say we did get an amendment through on the proxies to change it from 3 to 5.
Is that forever, or is that just for this meeting?
Now it's forever, because it was an amendment to the state constitution. So now it's forever unless it's amended at a future points. But the other one that they did that they had to do prior to the meeting rules, because it was in conflict with the state bylaws, was they changed the ability to call for a roll call vote. Normally a roll call vote would take 45 signatures of voting members, and each county divides out into their own little county. The county chairman takes a tally of how people are voting, and then the county chairmans report back to the body, and they tally it up, and that's the vote. Well, state party leadership believes that there were shenanigans doing that at the last meeting. So this amendment said 75 signatures and a true roll call vote. So we're going to call out everybody's name, and you're going to yell out your votes. That passed, and I'll be honest with you, I'm fine with that. And I said, I'll vote for that. I don't care. People can know how I vote. But the purpose for that was because it was talked about in an executive committee meeting that most people who were voting no wouldn't go on record because they don't want their constituents to know that they're against the opt-out. So it was more
really?
Than
so hold on. So does it get to remain an anonymous vote, or do you have to be documented?
Nope, you have to be documented, and that was the other part.
Oh boy, why would we do that?
Meeting, yeah, because at that very same executive meeting, the executive committee instructed Dave Williams that once this meeting was over on Saturday, they were going to, because the yes side was going to call for the roll call vote, because then they wanted Dave Williams to post how people voted on the state GOP website. So that passed, and that's how we voted on the opt-out, was by roll call, one name at a time, yelling out yes or no and documenting who voted how.
Do you think that changed some of the vote? I saw that 65% voted to opt out, which is an epic number given how they had done the last time. What do you attribute that increase to?
I attribute the increase to it's a grassroots movement, and they're doing a good job of getting around to the counties and getting the right bonus members in place and getting the right people in place that want the opt-out movement. I don't think the roll call vote changed anybody's mind. I mean, you had a slew of elected officials who still voted no on it, and I think that's a lot of where some of the pressure was coming from, is to get all of the elected officials to vote yes, because quote unquote, that's what your constituents want. But that's not accurate. I mean, for example, in Weld County, the Weld County vote was 19 no's and 6 yeses. And every single person, every single elected official that represented Weld County all voted no, because they voted with their county. They voted with their county constituents. And that happened in many places. I don't think that changed the votes. There was a few abstentions. Ironically, the people that abstained were people who have supported the opt-out for a long time. So abstaining was, I don't even know what kind of message they thought they were sending, because people knew that they supported it and their abstention became a yes anyway.
Interesting. What's next then? And by the way, was it contentious at the meeting? Set the stage for us. We're talking with Sherrie Peif from Independence Institute Complete Colorado, page 2. Was there a lot of tension there? Was it good natured? Was there a lot of?
Oh no, there was a lot. There was more tension there than I think I've seen in a long time. The meeting was mismanaged. The executive board sat on stage during the debate for the opt-out and clapped and cheered and nodded yes, and clearly was biased in the way they presented themselves. Anna Ferguson and the new vice chair, Hope Sheppelman, were continuously clapping and cheering for the people that supported the opt-out. It was very contentious, because it was clear that we had a state board that was biased across the board. When it came time to vote for the meeting rules, everybody knew that the meeting rules were going to be highly debated, and they lined up somebody to get in line almost immediately and call for debate to be canceled before we even had debate. So we weren't even allowed to debate meeting rule 9 because Dave put him on the microphone. I think one guy got one person opposed to the meeting rules got comment in, and Dave immediately let debate be killed. So we didn't get debate on that. There was another amendment that was put forth that will allow state party leaders in the state party, the county parties, and the congressional parties. It'll allow the members of their executive board to endorse candidates prior to the primary. So if you have 2 Republicans running against each other for a primary seat, leadership can now publicly endorse them. And
hold on, candidates? Yeah.
So let's say you have Barbara Kirkmeyer versus Lori Sane for the 8th Congressional District, like last time.
Right.
The amendment allows the 8th Congressional District Board to come out and say, we hereby support Lori Sane.
But based on what?
Office. Based on the fact that Barbara Kirkmeyer petitioned on and didn't go through the process.
Huh.
So we get to that amendment, which requires 2/3 majority, keeping in mind that when we voted when there was an amendment to the bylaws, take it from 3 to 5, the chair Dave Williams did not believe that he could tell by a standing vote exactly how many members were going in each direction. So he had a count. He had his teller committee come out on the floor and count us one by one, all the yeses and all the nos. Well, when it got to this amendment, he had already lost the proxy challenge. He had already lost the opt-out. He was clearly frustrated. We go to vote on this amendment. They did not have 2/3 majority, but Dave didn't do the count this time. He just ruled in the favor of the amendment and said, sit down, basically said, sit down and shut up.
No way. Hold on. So you think that Dave looked out there at the crowd, having suffered blow after blow, and decided this counting thing sucks. I'm just going to declare my side won?
Yeah, that's exactly what I believe.
There's no appeal from this? There's no one that can point of order call? So wait a minute. So what are the new rules? The new rules are now that the party can just on its own, when someone petitions on, support the other assembly candidate?
Yep.
And that
somebody
forever?
Did go up to the microphone. Yeah, it's embedded in our bylaws. And somebody did go up to the microphone and ask for a point of order and ask for a roll call vote. And Dave said it's too late.
Unbelievable. Why didn't this get any ink? This is the most controversial thing you've told us about this process. It's not the attempt to try to get rid of the unaffiliateds and maybe every other non-assembly attending Republican. I mean, that's predictable. But this thing right here sounds like it is super questionable.
Agreed. 100%. I think most, if I can look back to the media that was there, I think most of them have left at this point because this was toward the very end of the meeting and they were there for the opt-out. And so I don't think they realized what happened.
I got to be honest, if the party is now going to take an inter-primary partisan really approach to this, not only are you going to, it's not going to encourage people to go through the assembly. In my opinion, it will encourage more people to run outside the party and just simply say, well, that's it then. I'm just going to run as an unaffiliated or fill in the blank, and it will scuttle the Republicans' chances of victory. We'll see more Democrats elected over this rule than had he just let it happen the way it's been going historically. I don't get it. I understand not letting petition on candidates speak at the assembly. That makes total sense to me. You don't want to go through the process. You don't get the benefit of the platform. I get that part. But to allow the party to come out and weigh in against another declared Republican, and by the way, when that happens, and let's say that person loses, what kind of unity do you expect when the party has come out against another Republican?
Agreed. There's not going to be unity. And here's the problem. Here's the part of the problem that nobody talks about, that nobody remembers as to why we're at this point in the first place. Candidates have always been allowed to petition on, always, okay? This is not something that's new to the state of Colorado or the GOP. However, in the past, and I don't remember when it happened, it was maybe 3-4 election cycles ago. It hasn't been very long, but I'd say maybe at least 3 election cycles ago. It used to be that you would go through the assembly process. You had to go through the assembly process, okay? And once you went through the assembly process, if you did not get the 30% of the assembly that you needed to get on the ballot, on the primary ballot that way, so long as you garnered 10% of the vote, you could then go petition on. And you had a very, 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 very tiny window to be able to do that. Well, at some point, I don't know, 3 or 4 election cycles ago, the county clerks started complaining that that window was so small, it was really hard for them to then get petitions in their office, validate
do the count,
and get those names on the ballot. So they switched it so that it said, okay, now you can petition on prior to the primary, but if you petition on and you decide to go through the caucus assembly and you don't get the 10% at that time, you are no longer on the ballot. You still have to get the 10%. So that has led people who wanted to petition on just in case they didn't get the 10%, that has led them to not go through the assembly process, because now they're risking spending hundreds and hundreds of hours out there collecting signatures. They're risking not making the ballot if they don't get that 10%. So they just don't go through the process. Now, there are people like Barbara Kirkmeyer, who when she ran for Senate District 23, did both anyway. She petitioned on, and this is one of the other big misnomers. Everybody's like, all Barbara Kirkmeyer ever does is petition on. That's not accurate either. When she ran for Senate District 23, she petitioned on, and she ran through the assembly, and she still became top name on the ballot because she still had the most votes at assembly. So there are people that still do it. There are people that don't do it, and they don't do it because of the way the state law has shifted over the last 2 or 3, 4 election cycles.
Well, you're right. The calendar change has been what, and I know this as a guy who ran and done it. So you were right. Back in 2012, when I ran for district attorney, it was exactly how you first described, which is you got to get 10% or you could petition, and there was still time on the clock to do it, even though many people, I mean, listen, in 2012, Sherrie, it was actually, 2012. I'd just gotten back from Iraq maybe a year before, and I had started the petition process because I thought, well, I got back too late. There were already 3 Republican candidates in it. I just didn't have a ground game. And I thought, well, I'll just petition on. So I started petitioning. There are 4 different assemblies you want to talk to before you get to the 18th JD one. And the grassroots support was so overwhelming, I abandoned the petition and just ended up going through the assembly and doing it. But when I kept all 3 other Republicans off the ballot at the 18th JD assembly, one of them had gotten just under 30%, like maybe 27%. And she ended up petitioning on, forcing a primary. And I'll tell you, I was super bummed to have to waste time and money doing that primary, but that was just how it worked. Now you can't wait. You can't wait to find out. Like, you have to have done it beforehand, which kind of sucks.
It does. It really does. And that's the problem with the whole, the same thing happened when Hugh McKean ran for his first term in House District 51. They went through the assembly process, and Hugh kept everybody else off the ballot. But Tom Lucero garnered his 10% that he needed to garner at assembly, and he beat a path for the next few days, collecting the signatures he needed to collect, forcing a primary against Hugh McKean in that very first term that Hugh McKean had. And Hugh ended up being, like yourself, victorious in the primary. But so there's many examples of that out there. And all that changed was the calendar. But everybody wants everybody to believe that petitioning on is new to the system, and it's cost us all of these elections over the years. And that's not true.
Sherrie, I had not intended to spend the whole segment talking with you about this because I want to talk about your fascinating new column. Do you have time left on your jail-provided phone to stay on and do another segment with us?
Yes, I can.
All right, Sherrie, stick around with us. Billy, if you don't mind putting Sherrie on hold. I got to quickly get through something, though, here, too. I want to tell you about some hip, knee, other joint pain. And by the way, believe me, I'm feeling it. I don't know what's going on. Like, I've never been a runner, but I've always been able to run. These last couple months of trying to get ready for this ridiculous marathon, at the end of this month, folks, we're less than a month before the Marine Corps Marathon. It's my knees. It's the front of my knees when I run. And just the 9 miles I did around Central Park yesterday, I can feel it right now. It'll go away in a day or so, but I want it to go away forever. Thinking hard about there's going to be that time, and you may already be there, when you need to call our friends at QC Kinetix. These folks are the local medical professionals that have figured out a way to fix these kinds of pains with you. No surgery, no gobs and gobs of pills, no downtime with the rehabilitation, and you have to take time out to go do this and have some young person put their hands on you and stretch you around and all that stuff. Nope. This is using fix you to regenerative medicine. All you have the benefits of that. And I'm close, folks. Well, let's see how I feel at the end of the month. I'm close. 303-900-8986. 303-900-8986. 303-900-8986. You can check them out at qckinetix.com to begin. That's the letter Q, the letter C, begins with a K, ends with an X, qckinetix.com. But then call them up and just try to stump them. Honestly, ask every question where you have a concern, and these folks will be able to answer it. That's qckinetix.com. When we come back, it's going to be you, me, Sherrie Peif, and 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy. Why should you buy?
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, bringing back up our VIP Sherrie Peif. I talked her ear off over the stuff that took place at the state level. Man, that's concerning, some of the things that are going on there. But I'm sure there's a rational explanation for it, and we'll get that rational explanation when we can from our buddy Dave Williams when he's back on. In the interim, Sherrie Peif, thanks for joining us. You have an article here called "Report Finds Denver Public Schools Using Left-Wing Political Litmus Test in Teacher Hiring." What?
Yeah. So there was an organization that put out some open records requests to, I want to say, 60 or 70 school districts across the country. And that included Denver Public Schools in Colorado, as well as I think Jefferson County was the other one that it asked for, and basically asking for their hiring protocols. You know, what do you use when you hire new teachers? What are the things that you put out there on the internet that show what the job is, what the responsibilities are? You know, what kind of education and requirements you need to apply for it, and then once they've turned in their resume and they come in for an interview, what are like some of the questions or whatnot that you put forth to them during that interview? And out of all of the different schools that they reached out to for these open records requests, Denver Public Schools and Jefferson County, like I said, were the two in Colorado. Jefferson County, they both submitted their information to the company or to the National Opportunity Project, which is the group that did this. And Jefferson County's reports came back pretty clean. There was nothing in there that was a red flag. But the stuff that came back for Denver Public Schools was beyond believable.
Really?
I mean, it was. Oh, yeah. It was. There were things that they put into like so one of the things that like the DPS equity statement. Part of the DPS equity statement reads, "We will achieve equity when we dismantle deeply rooted systems of oppression that have historically resulted in inequitable access and distribution of opportunities and resources for those who represent marginalized identities."
Was this drafted by newly appointed Representative Tim Hernandez? Because that sounds a lot like his brand of cuckoo.
It may very well be. And, they use materials like in a job posting. There was a statement in one of DPS's job statements or job postings that said, you will be a good candidate for DPS if you are willing to redistribute resources to our most marginalized students, families, and team members, and lead for racial and educational excellence to work to dismantle systems of oppression and inequity in our community. And it goes on to say that the most sought after candidates are those who demonstrate a willingness to conform, and that is really the word that they use in here, willingness to conform to controversial views on race, identity, and teachers' essentials, roles, and responsibilities in that. There is so much. There were questions that were leading that basically none of the questions had anything to do about students. None of the questions had anything to do about education. None of the questions had anything to do about your ability to teach. Everything in the DPS hiring practice is like and like I said, the word is literally in the documents, unless you are willing to conform to DPS's beliefs on controversial views, you will not be considered a candidate for a teaching position in Denver Public Schools.
It seems like we need good teachers, but I'll tell you what, this actually must work for Denver because their student performance is off the charts, amazingly Oh, no, wait.
Yeah, back up there a little bit, George.
Yeah, it turns out that whatever they're focusing on, it's obviously not the reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's something else because their scores are awful.
Oh, exactly. And that goes back to, we talk about this year's school board elections and how important they are across the state of Colorado. We got one up here in Greeley that is, you got a slate of 3 teachers union candidates, and you got a slate of 3 strong conservative candidates who are running for 3 open positions. And Greeley has never, in my memory, I mean, we've had situations where we've had slates of candidates before, but it's always been one side or the other. We have never had a situation where we literally have two very partisan slates of candidates, because this is, same thing. Remedial rate up here in District 6 is over 50%. Level of proficiency is well below 40% in almost every category. And all we want to talk about is equity and inclusion. We have got to start, and Denver Public, and I will be honest, and Greeley was not included in this, but Complete Colorado has dropped some CORA requests on some other school districts in Colorado. Since this group only dropped the CORA requests on Denver and Jefferson, I have dropped some CORA requests for these very same documents on some of the rest of the school districts across Colorado to see if there are other school districts that are aligning with DPS in this.
We're talking with Sherrie Peif from Complete Colorado, the Independence Institute. Sherrie, what can happen as a result of this? First off, I mean, I got so many questions. One of them is, you've been covering stuff like this for a while. What's the definition of anti-racist?
That is a really good question, because I don't even know anymore. I mean, anti-racist, I guess, would be conformity to the teachers union's definition of racism. Because anymore, and I hate this term, I hate it with a passion, but I don't know what else to call it, is the reverse racism that we're seeing within our communities, where if you don't absolutely 100% denounce white America, you're racist. I mean, I don't know.
Get it. The equity thing, by the way, and I'm not saying anything you don't know or listeners haven't thought of too, but that is, remember, it used to be equality. And what that ended up becoming, they lost the battle, was it ended up becoming about equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. Well, that's not what they want. That's not what the socialists want. The socialists want equality of outcome. And so you change the word to equity. And equity is no longer about the beginning of the process or even the journey. It's where you end up. And everybody has to end up with the exact same things, whether that's through redistribution or limiting other people. That's the definition of equity.
Yeah, and you'll hear, I've heard this in the Greeley election up here by the teacher union candidates is, I believe in a public education. Well, everybody believes in a public education.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know many people that don't believe in a public education, but our Constitution guarantees the right to a free education. It doesn't guarantee the right to a job. It doesn't guarantee the right to a public education that is equal to the outcome of the next door neighbor's child that's the same age. Everybody has to make of that public education what they make of it. You can't force equity when it comes to the outcome of your education, and that's exactly what they want to do. And so it's out of every election that we sit here and argue about on your show and all across Colorado and America, every election season, your school board elections are the ones that
this November.
matter
That's
most.
this November.
That's this November. And they matter most. And people really do, they're supposed to be nonpartisan races, but I've said it forever and I'll say it again. There's not a single public office that is nonpartisan. I don't care what race you're in. We have, our state board of education, the state board that determines everything that your students learn when they go to school, is a partisan election. We elect our state board of education whether they have a D or an R behind them. Our highest secondary educational system in Colorado, this board of CU Regents, is a partisan election, but yet we want to try to pretend that our local school districts need to be nonpartisan, and that's just not so. And people really need to pay attention to who's on their ballots in November in their local school boards.
Well, I love that you cover stories like this, Sherrie, because this is the kind of thing I don't think the Post and the Gazette or anybody else are doing work like this at this level. So I appreciate you jumping on stuff like this to talk about it. As always, you can find Sherrie's fantastic work at Complete Colorado, page 2. Page 1 just must be the nonsense, because page 2 is where all the good stuff happens. What's page 3?
Thanks, George. We don't have a page 3, but you
Is it-
never know. We might find one someday.
I want to believe it's Caldera's clothing optional page, which nobody ever wants to go to for a lot of reasons.
Oh yeah, let's hope. Yeah. I don't think. Yeah. Anyway, I'll stay away from that one.
Listen, fantastic job. Thanks for updating us on the state central committee stuff.
Yeah.
We couldn't have gotten anything better than that from anybody else. Thank you for doing that, Sherrie.
I appreciate it, and as always that both sides are going to be different from each other, so we all have a different take on how things happen. But yeah.
We have the wrong take, and then we have Sherrie's take. So Sherrie, thank you for giving us.
That's exactly it.
The good one. That's Sherrie Peif. You can find all of her good work at Complete Colorado, page 2. Check her out at the Independence Institute. We'll have Sherrie back on a regular. I just love the stuff that she reports on that no one else does. One other thing before I cut you loose for a quick break here. Got to talk about Gay Ribble with Empower Home. Let me tell you why it matters now, especially in the post-Alpine planning era. I've been reading a bunch of articles online, and it's not just about the coming increase in mortgage rates. It's that October is supposed to be the most cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs volatile month of the year for stocks. Yeah, that's a little scary too when you think about in terms of financing, how your retirement gets valued by whoever those financial people are. How do you make the money work? Well, listen, Gay Ribble isn't just a realtor. She knows the people in the finance world that can get you into the house. Some realtors just have contacts with finance people out there that do the harder to close down loans and all that other stuff. Gay knows those people. Her team sells faster than others. They sell for more than others, and the volume is ridiculous. They are in the business of building families and making them happy by putting them into the homes that they want to be in. Do this. Pick up the phone and give her a call at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. Or you can check out gayhasthebuyers.com. Tons of free information on there because they know that a smart buyer is a better buyer. Gayhasthebuyers.com, G-A-Y-E, gayhasthebuyers.com. When we come back, we'll close out the top of the hour. I got some thoughts on that. If you heard anything, by the way, if you were at the State Central Committee, Joan, give us a call and tell us what your thoughts were. The sketchiest thing I heard was that voice vote declaration that the party can now take up arms against another Republican in a primary. What do you think about that? 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Final minutes of this hour of the show. That'll take us to the halfway point. My thanks to Sherrie Peif, Complete Colorado, page 2. She's just one of those reporters absolutely every community needs to have. She'll take the deep dive on the stuff that the big folks just don't have the bandwidth to cover, or maybe it's the interest to cover. And she does it in a way, I think, that brings forward some issues that end up becoming the bigger boys' story. So I really appreciate Sherrie doing that. The blow-by-blow, the play-by-play, if you will, of the Saturday Central Committee meeting. That's going to be a topic we want to cover with D-Will when we get him back on the show. Very, very interesting that now the Republican Party will be permitted to take up arms against another Republican in individual primary races. That is not a formula for unity, in my opinion, but I can be persuaded otherwise. Hey, here's something you don't need any persuading on, and that is who to call when you're in trouble. If you get in trouble, and I mean somebody hurts you, and you don't know where to turn, what to do, who's going to pay my bills, how is my life going to get back on track, then you need to call Dan Caplis. Dan and Barbara Wahid, that's his partner of many years now. I think they've been together 16, 17 years since I was there at the firm learning civil law with Dan. These are the guys that go out there and hit home runs for you in a way that make them blow past the Rockies, because this year the Rockies were awful, but every year Dan Caplis law is fantastic. They take righteous cases. They're not just talk. That's what a lot of the other big firms do, the quote-unquote big PI firms. They don't do that. These are the folks that are about performance. Give them a call, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. You can check them out at dancaplislaw.com. Caplis is spelled Caplis law.com. Yes, I worked for Dan about, 16, 17 years ago, tried cases for Dan. Dude's a winner. Billy, how much time? Hey, welcome back to the Halfway Point in the George Show. It's 710 KNUS. Hey, listen, it's a big day for us out here at Salem. We get to welcome on board some fantastic folks who have put out a product out there that is going to be a difference maker for many of you, me included, by the way. In fact, Billy and I had been using this before we all ended up deciding, hey, this was the kind of thing we want to spread the word to the rest of the Salem universe out there. The product itself is called Ultra Cur. Now, if you're like, whoa, what does all that mean? The good news is we have on with us right now the founder, inventor, CEO, and a guy whose title, check this out, Chief Product Evangelist, Adam Payne and Josh Bluth. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, yeah, if you guys, I don't know if you guys have the ability to go off a speaker or not. It's just a little bit harder to hear you, but I'd love to get a little bit of background about you. Adam, tell me where you hail from. Where was home for you growing up, and how did you end up in the Ultra Cur business?
Well, it started many years ago when I started getting into biotech. It's one of those deals where I was in the pharmaceutical world, and God had different ideas about my path. I had a major health event, and that major health event essentially got me out of all the other things I was in.
Wow.
And the only door that was open was starting to work in natural medicine, something I didn't want to do. But I saw some things in there that were absolutely profound. It led us to an invention that allows turmeric and the active ingredient in turmeric, curcumin, to absorb into the body so people can actually experience all the benefits of curcumin, something that people have never been able to experience before, we don't think.
Adam, I always like to get a little bit of background on you, and I'll ask Josh the same thing, but where's home, man? Where did you grow up? Or what'd you do in high school?
Well, I'm a Yankee from Boston. Grew up in the Boston area, did my MBA out of Babson College, my undergraduate work out of the University of Massachusetts. I ended up in Oklahoma after my wife got into family medicine after she scrambled into a residency here. And Oklahoma has been my place of residence for over the last 20 years. Something I never expected to happen in my life, but it's just a wonderful place to live out here.
Adam, quick question. You still pull for the Pats and the Celtics and the Bruins and the dreaded Red Sox?
I do. I am a fan of the Red Sox and the Bruins. I remember when Bobby Orr got that slap shot win of the title way back in the 70s. That was kind of a highlight of my life back then. And I'll never miss a Celtics game if I can make it in.
I want people to look past that to the quality of the product, because I don't want you to lose business simply because you're a big
I know, I get
it. Josh, tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, and then what the heck is a chief product evangelist?
Yeah, born in North Africa to military parents.
Wow.
We'll talk about that sometime. And then, Tripoli, Libya on my birth certificate. So anyway, grew
Marines?
up in Oklahoma, though. We were, well, no, Dad was a pilot, colonel in the Armed Forces, U.S. Army. And then my mom was actually, my mom was the first squadron commander in Japan of the Women's Air Force. Very
cool
interesting story there. It is very cool. So anyway, we were in Alexandria, Virginia. My dad was at the Pentagon. We moved to Oklahoma to take care of her parents and my dad's parents. And I was the guy that didn't want to be in school pretty much every day I was there. Left school at 17, went to Houston, Texas, right in the middle of Pasadena, and right about my age, and worked for a labor union and was making great money, and got homesick and went back home, finished high school. But I've had a passion for this idea that you can get healthy by taking supplements, diet, lifestyle, those types of things forever. And so the chief product evangelist is very simple. I met Adam years ago when they had come out with this phenomenal research from Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation to get these ingredients in the body at super high levels. And unbeknownst to Adam, I'm saying, prove it. He slipped me a bottle of product. I took it. Pain I'd had for 5 years and my hips went away in 5 days. And I was like, okay, you got my attention. And so basically when somebody captures my attention with something that's so healthy for you, what I'm going to go do is I'm going to preach that gospel everywhere I go. And that was the start of our relationship over 8 years ago.
Can you do us a favor? Because listeners are going to want to know this too. Josh, how old are you and how old are Adam? Maybe I should say how young.
Okay, Adam, you start.
I'm 59 years young.
Yeah, I'm 64 going on 30. I'm turning my biological clock backwards, darn it.
Listen, if that's what UltraCur does, and whichever one of you wants to do this, first talk about this, and then I'll say, you guys provided Billy and I a great opportunity to test run this product, which I think is fantastic. There's the orange pills and the blue pills, and now there's this opportunity for people to try all this goodness really with a trial that's costless. Talk us through that.
Yes, super important for people to understand. When Adam developed this product with his colleagues at Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, people were so astonished at how quickly they were feeling this in their body, oftentimes between 24 and 72 hours, 24 and 72
That's
hours.
amazing.
That it is amazing. And so what we did is we were looking at each other going, how do we get people to use this product? And so we came up with a novel idea, kind of old fashioned. We said, let's give it to health practitioners all over Oklahoma City and let them try it on their patients that are dealing with the tough inflammation, the chronic pain. And what happened, George, is in 5 days, we began to get orders after these doctors and compounding pharmacists began to use it. So we developed this idea. We don't have any money to push this product out there. So what did we do? We made samples and began to give them away to health food stores like Natural Grocers, who's now a big account of ours, just about 3 months ago. And so anybody can try the product before they buy it by walking in, talking to one of the vitamin managers there in the Denver metro area and say, hey, I heard about these crazy guys on the radio, and I would like a sample of UltraCur. And they'll give you a 3-day trial, and people are going to scratch their head and go, no way, 3 days? And we say, yes way, try it before you buy it.
Yeah, here's the thing is that, because Billy and I had done it, I am 53, depending upon the day, either going on 27 or 97. It just depends on how I feel. But I've decided to do this ridiculous Marine Corps marathon thing, and the training for it has reminded my body, you should have done this a decade ago, And so meanwhile, I get these aches and pains just post run and all that. We started doing the UltraCur. And I got to tell you, the pain, it was there initially, but it dissipated much more quickly. I found that by the next day, I was back to feeling pretty darn good. And that was almost not instantaneous, but you know what I mean? It was like over a couple days that I noticed this change. So I don't know how the science and the voodoo stuff works, man, but I know it does work.
Yep.
Well, we essentially use protein as a way to get the curcumin into the body. That's the active ingredient in turmeric. Again, curcumin should be something that we all experience, just like ibuprofen, just like anything that we take over the counter. But curcumin is natural. It doesn't hurt the kidneys, doesn't hurt anything in the body. And if you can get it in your body, you experience immediate, tangible benefits.
Yeah. Listen, do me a favor, because I think people at this point are like, wait a minute, what did they say about how I get my hands on this? I think I heard Natural Grocers. Just tell folks again before we cut you guys back loose to doing the great work that you're doing here. How do folks benefit from this?
Yeah, they can go to any Natural Grocer store in the metro area there in Denver. It's about 12 or 13, I think, there. They can walk in and say, hey, I need to talk to the vitamin manager. I need a free trial of UltraCur, and it's on your shelf back there. And they will give you, and guess what? Ask for one for a friend or loved one. Be generous. They'll give you 2, okay? Because we want everybody to be able to experience this. Yep.
Yeah, that's super cool. Listen, I want to have you guys back on too as we begin to get feedback from folks too. Is there some place they can go to get more information on it?
Absolutely. Yeah, they can go to a simple website, easy to remember, Get Ultra Now. That's GET, the word ultra, NOW, now.com.
Man, it's exciting stuff. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of the morning to do this. I can't also thank you enough for coming up with a product like this that is natural. That's what matters to me. I'm so tired of the pill stuff. And even though it looks like a pill, it's just all natural. I appreciate that. Adam Payne, Josh Ballou, we'll have you guys back on in the future.
Hey, thanks, George.
Hey, thanks, gentlemen. And look past that whole Red Sox thing. I'm trying to do that right now as a Yankees fan. But again, the product is so awesome. Go to your natural grocer and get your hands on that stuff now. Now, here's the thing, folks. By the way, getultranow.com. Getultranow.com. Hey, he's behind the microphone right now there in Denver because Big Daddy's got to slip away and go put on the monkey suit and go dance for a living here for a little bit on some law enforcement stuff. You know him better as the head of all things Colorado Christian University and the Centennial Institute. His name is Jeff Hunt. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
George, great to be with you, brother. Good morning.
I feel like I'm actually joining you. You're the one with your hands on the wheel. You know what I mean?
Well, you're the international man of mystery, so it's fun to fill in for you when you are out there saving the world. You know, I heard that they crafted Jason Bourne after your life. So, did you get royalties with that film?
Yeah, that was actually the fifth installment that didn't make it. It was called The Bourne Nap, and they decided not to do that because it just really wasn't. It was like Cocoon 3. I don't know. Listen, I'm glad you're there. And Lewis, make sure you put this guy on camera all the time. Thanks for showing up too, man, and doing this. You're a huge lifesaver. Two things I wanted to ask you about. One, did you go to the state central committee thing? Because you're pretty involved in all good things, politics as well.
Yeah,
two, what's your
I used to actually work for the state party back when Ryan Call was the chairman. Do you remember that? And then I
remember pre-indictment Ryan.
Yeah. Yeah, right, exactly. I was not a part of that, by the way.
No,
that was later in life. But I have not been a part of all of that in many years. I was sitting at a Ritz-Carlton in Arizona all weekend, so I had a much better life. But
awful. I'm so sorry,
buddy. Right. But I got to tell you, I obviously very close with Kevin Lumberg. He sits as the chair of the Centennial Institute Committee on the Board of Trustees at CCU, and so I've been following the lawsuit. And in many ways, this kind of made the argument for the lawsuit, which is they can't get to this opt-out line. And as a result, they need to have the freedom to associate. Now there's all these arguments out there, right, with regards to the importance of connecting with independent voters and non-affiliated voters, allowing them to participate in the process. But at the same time, there are very accurate, very viable constitutional questions as to whether or not the restrictions on the state party actually prevent the freedom of association. Those are legitimate constitutional questions. So I'm in favor of the lawsuit moving forward. I think the fact that they couldn't reach that threshold makes that argument kind of stronger. But listen, Colorado, with regards to Republicans in Colorado, we're in the ditch right now, and we've got to be able
the dirt in on top of ourselves,
right? And you've got to have a strategy to reach independents and unaffiliated. So I understand that side of the argument. It is a complicated place, and I've seen this happen as we lose. The fighting just gets more and more intense. It's because we're too conservative that we're losing. No, it's because we're not conservative enough that we're losing.
Right.
And at the end of it, it's just the fact that we're losing that's driving this. So when I first spoke to Dave Williams right after he became chairman of the GOP, I said, you have one thing to do, and that is win. Just find a way to get some wins. I don't care if they're little basic local elections, school board, really, really important, but ballot harvest the heck out of this state legally, of course, but start to get wins, because if you can win, the infighting will start to dissipate a little bit, and then you can achieve what you want to achieve.
A couple thoughts on that. One, I agree with you, man. I am not a fan of the idea of people who have rejected putting on the jersey voting for the team captain. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me at all. I want the lawsuit to move forward because I want to know the answer. The one hook I think the state has always had in saying we get to have some say in how you conduct the primary is that they're requiring all Colorado taxpayers to fund it, right? Like it comes out of taxpayer funds, and they're like, well, wait a minute. We're going to get to. So if there was a way for us to figure out how to fund our own similar primary process where we don't disenfranchise Republicans, because that's my other big worry about going to an assembly only process is what do we do to all the other Republicans out there who for one reason or another can't participate or won't participate but want to have a say in it? If we could do that, I think that's stronger too. The lawsuit appeals to me because then it applies to both sides.
Right.
I worry about just sort of unilaterally disarming, if you will, and simply saying, well, we'll be the party that rejects all these other voters who are going to simply do whatever they're going to do on the Democrat side or whatever. But the part that Sherrie Peif from Complete Colorado page 2 talked about that I found interesting was, you talk about his number one goal, Dave's got to be win. I agree 100%. That's number one. If there's a close two, it's got to be unity, because I think they're related. I'm just not sure how we get to unity when you pass a rule by voice vote that says, hey, if you decide to petition on rather than go through the assembly, the party can take up arms against you in the primary. And then what happens after that? You win the primary and you guys all hug it out after that, or you lose the primary and you're going to take all of your support and your supporters and then throw them towards. I just don't feel like that. That's like Reagan Commandment 11 just set on fire or something. How does the party take up arms against another Republican in a contested race?
When did we open these primaries up to unaffiliated voters? What date was that? Was that 2000?
I want to say like
16?
Yeah, 16, I think.
16, okay.
Maybe.
So here's the point that we've got to understand. Even when it was closed, those that won at the caucus level did not win the general primary later.
That's right.
Always. So I'll remember this because I was working for Mike Kopp. He ran for governor in 2014.
Yep, good dude. Mike's a good
something
dude.
like
Army
that,
guy.
right?
Yeah.
And Mike, great guy, wins the caucus, wins it pretty handedly, and I can go into the whole strategy on how it was like the first campaign where we used text messages. So we just blasting all the caucus people while all the other candidates were speaking, just making their phone buzz and interrupting their speeches. It was kind of funny. But so Mike wins that, and then goes on to lose to Bob Beaupre, right, in the general primary.
I remember.
So, this idea that somehow it's the unaffiliates that are interrupting the caucus process and is not necessarily true, because I think, and Bob Beaupre petitioned on, right? Bob did not go through the caucus process. So even back then, there was a difference between a general Republican primary and a caucus primary. And Mike was great, but he didn't win the general primary. So, right. I don't think you can make the argument that the caucus system alone best reflects Republican primary voters. So, I going back purely to the caucus system and then creating that type of division, I'm not sure that's the best way to go.
I would like to see the party stay out of weighing in on primary. I get the motivation. The motivation is we want people to come to the assembly. We want to drive. I totally get that. And the grassroots plays an undeniable and critical role in everything. But to do it at the exclusion of these other means of getting on the ballot, I worry about that. And I totally get, like, if you don't go through the assembly, you don't get a talk at the assembly. Makes total sense to me.
Right.
It makes total sense.
I agree.
But to then say the party will take up arms against another Republican and spin up its machine, I presume alienating money and time and effort to defeat another Republican. Buddy, I don't know. How is that the path to victory for us? I just don't see it. Back in 2014 at the assembly, I was a Greg Brophy guy.
Yeah, Brophy.
Yeah.
You guys were the ones
GB,
smashing watermelons on the main stage, right? Right? Like a wrestling match.
He was going to Gallagher his way to the ballot. I think Greg would have been an awesome governor, and he has the right initials, GB. So listen, there was something else before I turn the reins over to you. You also wanted to talk about something Sherrie brought up about this litmus test over at DPS. You're a big education guy.
I'm
and your wife is too.
Super fired up about this. Okay. So yeah, they're finally showing their true colors with regards to their hiring processes. And the fact that public education serves for one thing and one thing only, according to these leftists, to indoctrinate your children to become Marxists. They could not care at all about your reading, about your arithmetic, about your mathematics, anything like that. They don't care about that, because if they did, they'd be electing board members that actually cared about that. If you go and look at Tay Anderson's tweets, right, what does he celebrate? Does he celebrate or try to say, I'm going to take on our math problems or our reading problems or graduate. None of that. He doesn't take that. What he celebrates social issues that he drives through in an agenda. So, for instance, allowing men to go to the bathroom with girls. Man, he will tweet about that all day. He'll celebrate that. And that is his big victory as the school board leader for Denver. So there's two things I want to do. And the article on this was brilliant because it's starting to expose that, they're hiring purely based on political affiliation. And if you're a conservative, like if you filled out that essay in the Denver public school hiring process and said, I'm deeply committed to judging a person solely by the content of their character. And I believe in equal opportunity, but not equal outcomes. And you listed that, you're not going to get a job. You could be smart. You could be Harvard educated, brilliant, and be able to deliver quality education for children. But if you mess up that portion, I'm guessing they're not going to allow you to work. So there's two things I want to do. I want to launch a libs of education type of thing, like where we just put videos out there all day, right? Kids, film your teacher doing the most leftist baloney in classrooms and send it to us because, and I'm going to be a little controversial on this. I want to get a giant billboard like right off of I-25, George, that just says, for the love of God, get your kids out of government run education, right? There's so many people. Well, we've got to have public schools. We got to have they're so important. I think you unleash kind of ESAs and school choice, and Jared Polis will never do this, right? You say, I'm for school choice. I started 2 charter schools, but the level of school choice of kind of that you see in Arizona and Florida, where you can go to Valor if you wanted to. Could you imagine giving kids vouchers to be able, and families to send their kids to Valor or Mullen or Regis or any of those other great schools and say, have at it? They would empty out of those government-run schools. It is price that is holding them back.
Other than the transportation issue for the DPS folks, other than that transport, because I think that's legit too. But what you would see is those private schools popping up where the populations are to get them. So this is a short-term problem. The other thing I'd say is, and I know this isn't your topic, but you combine what's going on inside the classrooms on purpose with the things that they allow to happen. I don't know if you remember this story, Jeff, but it is DPS policy now that even if you're an attempted murderer, like you took a gun and shot a bunch of people, during the pendency of your case, you get to go sit in class next to the Hunt kids. You know what I mean? Because what am I supposed to do with them? I mean, this is what the DPS superintendent asked a person from the press. Well, what am I supposed to do with them? So, one, if your child isn't stuck sitting next to a distraction who's a kid who may end up going to prison for many, many years for trying to kill other human beings, then you have to get past the indoctrination piece into equality of outcome and the Marxism stuff. It is amazing to me that if they had any other alternative, including just cable network news all day, why they keep their kids in DPS.
Right. Well, how dare you hold anybody responsible for their actions, right? I mean, we're going to allow these kids that have violent pasts to just continue to sit in schools. I mean, it's part of an entire worldview, George. It's part of an entire worldview that your kid is going to be infiltrated, inundated with, and then they're going to come out of school with no actual skills and the inability to live a successful life, but they'll be useful pawns in a political scheme to keep Democrats in power. That is what it is all about. And so if we, most Republicans are afraid to say this. We've got to, public schools are very important. We've got to keep them going. No, we don't. They are horrible indoctrination infested entities that are failing our children. And we continue to pump more and more and more money into them when you have a perfectly allowable solution, which is to allow parents to send their kids where they want, irregardless of price. Anyways, I could speak about that all day.
But we are, and you're going to, because we're going to have to cut away for a break here. When we come back, I think, folks, what we've just heard is the preamble to what you're going to come to know as Hunt Academy, which I believe Jeff is launching out of their Elbert County way home. Folks,
Come hang out with
get
our
online
goats and learn.
huntacademy.com is where you're going to go. Listen, Jeff Hunt is going to take over and take us all the way to the end zone at 10 a.m. when Charlie Kirk will take over. By the way, last time I saw Jeff in person, it was also with Charlie Kirk. Maybe he'll talk about that story
That's
as
right.
well. And
Watch
by
a
the
little
way,
football with Charlie.
watch a little football. Screwed you, Ducks. Screw the Ducks. I'm just saying. Listen,
Charlie was
stick
very
around.
happy that day.
He's not going to listen to this. He might listen to you, though. Stick around. Jeff Hunt when we come back. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Good Monday morning in Denver, Colorado. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler as he runs off to be the International Man of Mystery today. We just had a conversation right at the very end there. George was talking about Charlie Kirk, who starts right at 10. Charlie was in town for a school fundraiser last weekend, and so Charlie texted me and said, hey, let's go watch the Oregon Ducks and CU Buffs game. And so we did, and George joined us, and then Charlie just gloated the entire time while the Oregon Ducks took down the CU Buffs. So, Billy, we were talking about the expansion of school choice. It's definitely not a given. There's a lot of challenges. You do that, and we've got a big uphill mountain to climb.
Yeah, we do.
You're concerned about what happens when we start adding government funds to private education because it'll drive up the cost, right?
Yeah, that's the part that the only thing that prevents me from getting on board with the idea of universal vouchers and giving them to all the students and allowing you to pick and choose where you're going to schools is the idea of supply and demand. I understand the aspect of giving families that don't have the economic means the ability to get into the higher price schools, the Colorado Academies, Kent, Denver Country Day, getting into Mullen, Regis, Valor. That's great, but that's only going to happen for a short window because supply and demand tells us that eventually the price for those higher price schools is going to absorb the voucher. And that's what I'm worried about, is that we will institute this and it's going to be great for the first 5-6 years. But in a decade, all we've done is we've set up a state-funded subsidy for rich schools. And that's what if I could find something that would prevent that from happening, if I could find a way that in 10, 15, 20 years, those underprivileged kids can still have access to get into Mullen and Colorado Academy and Kent Country Day and Regis and Valor, then I'm in. But I have yet to see anybody address that because that's what's going to happen. And
right.
that's why I can't get on board.
And it's a fair argument because it's happened in higher education.
Yes,
I work in higher education. And, you know, when the government started to get involved to provide Pell Grants and all that type of stuff, costs just went up. And the schools didn't pay teachers more, professors more, they paid administrators more.
Yes.
And so, right, all the money funnels into these administrators and these kind of big new programs. And look,
and public school has the same issue. They absolutely have the same issue. Yeah,
exactly. So on one hand, you could end up with more Kent Denvers, right? We could have 2 or 3 of those. But here's an equal problem. And this is, I've got to write an op-ed on this because this is a wall that the school choice movement is going to run into because I experience it personally with our kids' school, and they go to a conservative charter school.
Yeah. What is it? I'm curious.
There are not quality headmasters and teachers that have come out of the conservative movement. There just aren't. Okay. So
fair point. Yeah.
For the last 30 years, if you were a really smart, young, talented conservative, we pushed you into law or we pushed you into business. The idea that you were going to go into education, right? Let's say you're at Princeton, you start the Princeton conservative newspaper, all that stuff. You're young, you're talented, you're a go-getter. We didn't push you into education. You were pushed into running for office or law or business. So the idea that there's this dearth, this plethora of conservative headmasters and principals and conservative teachers that are not just principally conservative, but quality teachers, right? It's not enough. Sorry.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It's not enough just to have the values. You need to actually be a good teacher. And the school where our kids go now is a conservative charter school, has run into this. 5-6 headmasters in 5 years.
Wow.
40% teacher turnover year after year after year.
Oh, that's awful.
Right? So we as conservatives are all fired up. We're going to get school choice. We're going to create these opportunities. But it's not enough to just have those principles. Yes, it's a heck of a lot better than sending them into DPS where they're just going to be, have leftist Marxism shoved down their throats. But if you think somebody that is deeply conservative, has conservative values, has also gone through the process of becoming a quality teacher and learning to teach well in the classroom and guide a student through and lead a school well, those actual hard skills you have to have, they're not there.
No, they're not going to be there. And I hadn't even thought about that. And you're also not going to have the altruism per se of taking the lower pay, because one of the conservative values, I need to maximize my worth. And I can see some of the liberal side of things. Obviously, it's strangely enough, though, the liberals never want to take less pay themselves. They want everybody else to have less pay. It's strange how that works. It's very weird. I haven't figured that one out yet. But I can see that they've been pushing into law and business because that's where you can maximize your value. And coming over into the educational system, not only are you going to have a problem finding them, but then there's going to be competition for them. That you're going to have the competition, even if you start up 5 new conservative charter schools around the city, you're going to have competition between even those schools for those people. And you're going to have to increase salaries, which is going to increase tuition, which then is going to make it harder for the people that can't afford to get to the private schools right now to get into the schools. So it becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, how do we get conservatives into that educational tract? One, understanding that there are 2 things working against it. One being just the ecology of it. The idea that it is a I wouldn't say business model, but is a profession that is steeped in liberalism. That some being good and some being bad. But it absolutely, you have to go and swim in the liberalism pool at this point if you're going to be a conservative teacher. And you've got to figure out a way to navigate that. And then 2, how do you motivate them based on pay? Right. Because that's the other one, is that going into business or going into, getting my SBA or getting my, small business administration degree is much more profitable than getting my teacher certificate. And how do I balance that out? How do I convince a conservative that their value is going to be felt here as the teacher, even though they're not going to be able to maximize that value with take-home pay? What do we do?
And here, I'm going to add a third problem.
Yeah,
here. So education is primarily female dominated, right?
Yes,
it's not 50-50.
No, not even close.
And so if you're a conservative woman, what do you tend to do with your life? You probably aren't going to work in education, right? You're going to spend your time at home raising your own children. So there's not even a pool of conservative women that necessarily want to be teachers. They're very content, very happy, and rightfully so. It's a perfectly acceptable lifestyle choice to be like, I'm going to homeschool my children. I'm going to invest in the kids here. I don't want to be in a classroom of 30. I'm very happy with my 4 kids, and I'm going to invest there.
That homeschooling, I hadn't thought about that. That was something when you said the staying home, but now I can see the fulfillment because you can do the homeschooling. So you can fulfill that educational bend that you may have. You may have that calling, but rather than get into and play in the cesspool that is liberalism inside of the major school districts, you instead stay clean and you're able to fashion what you need and what you desire at home. And I imagine your kids are going to be high achievers at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
I hadn't even thought about that.
And I will tell you, as someone who's hired homeschool kids, they outperform everybody, mostly because they can self-manage. So when I give them a project, right, I have, let's say we hire 4 kids over at the Centennial Institute, college students. If I give the homeschool kid a project, he just goes off and does it, right? Because their entire education's that way, right? They're not having somebody over their shoulder showing them the whole time. The public educated kids, and I'm a public educated kid. I went to Cherry Creek High School, went Cherry Hills, West, Cherry Creek. They ask a lot of questions. Right. So it's different, but this is a big challenge. This is a brick wall that the conservative school choice movement is going to run into. That the majority of the teachers, the majority of the administrators are leftists. So you don't have a pool to be able to pull from. You have the rising cost. I think that's a very fair argument, Billy. That's going to push up everything. That's all going to be step 2. And unfortunately, we're not even thinking. We're still running around going, school choice, school opportunity. Okay, well, once you get it, what does it look like? And as someone who's tried to be a part of the founding of a conservative charter school for the last 6 years, it's way harder than we think.
And again, that is an insight that I had not considered, was the pool of the conservative teachers, because in many ways, and I like analogies, in many ways, it's the idea of saying, if I could only afford to go to that really expensive steakhouse over there, I'm over here at, the lower end, the Village Inn, and I'm getting the Salisbury steak, and I'm doing okay. But if I could only afford to get into that steakhouse, and you get in and you're like, it's still steak. It's the same thing. I'm not necessarily, it may be prepped a little bit better. It may look better on the plate, but it's still the same end product. And that's the thing. So you may get into the richer school. You may get into the school that has the nicer zip code. You may be able to get in there, But at the core, the end result, while the kids may do better on the standardized tests, while the kids will probably come out knowing more and having a deeper knowledge of education, they're still coming out after swimming through the liberal pool. And so the result is still going to be the end, regardless of the school. Achievement's going to be different, but result is still the same.
If we only had a Christian conservative university that was producing Christian conservative teachers.
If only there was one of those. One of those in the metro area.
Right.
Maybe over on Garrison Street.
Colorado
Possibly.
Christian. Right.
Possibly. If only once.
Of which Billy isn't allowed.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil that. But yeah, you were a soccer player for CCU years ago.
That was fun. Still have the warm up in my closet. It was one of the things we practiced.
Does it still fit?
If I go and I breathe in and I get the tummy in a little bit, then I can still zip it up.
Do your knees still work after all those years playing soccer?
No, not at all. My knees are shot, my ankles are shot. It is awful. There are times I get up and it sounds like popcorn. It is horrible. It's one of those things. And it definitely was not in the brochure. When you're talking about getting older, it's all about, hey, get a stay up as late as you want. Make your own choices. Eat candy for breakfast if you want. Not the idea that you have no energy and everything hurts. And
you just expand horizontally even if you try to diet.
Oh, yeah. It is just personally, it is not fair biologically that the time in which we actually get to a point in our life when we are allowed to eat whatever we want, we can't eat whatever we want. Why is that fair?
Oh, my goodness. All right. When we come back, we're going to dive into this Matt Gaetz challenge to Speaker Kevin McCarthy and whether or not it's going to work. Strong words coming not only from the Wall Street Journal, Matt Gaetz, Biden's favorite Republican, my goodness, but Mark Levin, the gray one, also not happy with Matt Gaetz challenging McCarthy. I got to be honest, though, I am wildly frustrated, and I'm only 41 years old, with how Republicans cannot stop growing spending in this country. So we'll cover that. All of that as we finish up this hour and get into the next hour. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler on this beautiful Monday morning, October 2nd in the Mile High City. Great to have you all with us. All right, Speaker McCarthy, is he on the ropes? Are you happy with this government deal to avoid a shutdown? Here's from Reuters. U.S. House Speaker McCarthy braces for likely new Republican rebellion. U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy is staring down a threat to his leadership, which could plunge the Republican Party back into a crisis this week. I don't think it's quite a crisis, but definitely a challenge. Days after dodging a federal government shutdown, rebellious Republican Representative Matt Gaetz on Sunday pledged to launch a bid to oust McCarthy as House Speaker just 9 months after he struggled to win the job amid challenges from Gaetz and other hardline conservative Republicans. If you remember the 15 ballot votes, Gaetz, I am relentless, and I will continue to pursue this objective. I got to be honest, and we're running up against a commercial break here in just under 2 minutes, so feel free to call in on this. Guys, it doesn't seem like Republicans ever stop this. Now, Ann Coulter, she had the kind of comment that the growing debt in America just doesn't matter. This is kind of the left in climate change. We cry about this, we kick and scream about this, but at the end of the day, it doesn't actually affect anybody's life. $33 trillion in debt. Did it matter to you that it's $33 trillion in debt? How about when it was $28 trillion in debt or $25 trillion in debt? Now, I understand the inflation argument, but I'm not sure that that's solely tied to our debt problems in this country. So does it really matter? I'll be honest. To me, it absolutely does. And I'm incredibly frustrated that Republicans never seem to really win on this. I've been in politics for 20 years, and we go through the exact same thing all the time. We're into these omnibus spending packages, right? So we don't really know what we're spending our money on in our government. We pass these without really much debate. We stomp and scream, and for a few days we'll hold out, but we always get right to the edge, right to the line. The government's going to shut down. And I remember that one time the government did shut down. The biggest problem it seemed to bother everybody was that the panda cams at the National Zoo weren't working anymore. And I know that there's people in the federal government that need to be paid. But my goodness, Republicans, grow a spine and start fighting this stuff. Seriously. Either we really care about debt, and this was one of the biggest critiques about Trump's administration too, was that we just kind of talk about it, but we push through. All right, take callers. Let me know. Does McCarthy need to be out? Does the government debt really bother you? The spending problems? 303-696-1971. We'll be right back. Jeff Hunt filling in for the great George Brauchler, the international man of mystery. Somewhere in the world, they designed the Jason Bourne movies after him. I don't know if you know that. Hey, I run the Centennial Institute at Colorado Christian University, one of the most conservative think tanks in the state, chairman of the Western Conservative Summit. So let's launch into it. U.S. Speaker Kevin McCarthy braces for likely new Republican rebellion. Matt Gaetz claiming he's going to move to oust the speaker. Gaetz was angered by McCarthy's move to pass a short-term funding bill on Saturday with support from opposition Democrats to keep the government fully operating. Gaetz and a group of other hardline House Republicans insist on deep spending cuts the Democrats argue will break a deal brokered earlier this year by President Joe Biden and McCarthy. All right. How much does it matter to you that we just keep driving up the debt? $33 trillion. Does it hurt you? Does it hurt you more than when our debt was at $31 trillion? How about $29 trillion? Does it really matter? Ann Coulter making the argument Republicans need to get off of this because it's like climate change for the left. Does it ultimately hurt anybody? And all of these things that we're doing, like threatening to shut down the government, is it just ultimately hurting us? So, for instance, the left out there says, oh, the climate's going to change. If we don't fix things in 10 years, everything's going to fall apart and our world's going to be on fire. And so they drive up everybody's gas prices. And ultimately, we know that that's not going to happen. She makes the argument on the right that when you talk about trillions of dollars in debt, it doesn't actually affect anybody. So you're willing to shut down the government, which will actually harm people in order to achieve it. Now, listen, I'm the type of guy who says, if we had a governor in Colorado that got elected, said, I'm going to just lock the door, call me if there's an emergency, and we as a state legislature only met every 2 years like they do in Texas, that would be a really good thing. I don't mind a government shutdown. I want that. And so I'm frustrated with these omnibus spending bills that take place at the federal level that just continue to drive up our deficit and pour more and more money into stuff that we know is not good for this country. So does it matter to you? Does the debt really matter to you that we're at $33 trillion? And are you willing to shut down the government to achieve it? All right, Jim from Denver, you're on with the George Brauchler Show. Jeff Hunt filling in for George.
Hey, yeah, go ahead and shut it down if you wish, but there's really no reason to be worried about deficits.
No reason to be worried about it. But if you're running your own family, you'd surely be worried about deficits. So tell me why it's different.
Oh, yeah. My home budget is completely different. But this is our national budget. And my entire lifetime, heck, they got rid of gold in what's his name's
Nixon
administration. Nixon got rid of it for one reason, so he could spend more. So our side of the political aisle could continue spending because we were being restrained for the first time since World War I, in fact. And so we got rid of it. And every single president that has referred to themselves as conservatives, regardless of what they say, has spent more and more money and increased the deficit.
Right.
So have the so-called libtards as well. So they've all done the same thing. And the really important thing is that we lower taxes to increase the debt, because the debt is how we integrate our nation's monetary system into the entire world. Our role as Americans is to create debt and service the demand for that debt around the world. And that's exactly what we've done. And that's why we have more millionaires in this country than any other nation on this planet.
But those millionaires aren't nearly the millionaires that they used to be, right? I mean, inflation has driven up. So these millionaires aren't nearly what the millionaires used to be. But Jim, isn't this a ticking time bomb? I mean, at some point, You can't have just unlimited debt. Why not have, if you're going to have 33 trillion, why not 50 trillion? Let's go, baby. Let's start writing those checks.
We leapfrogged over 30 trillion with a guy that told us he was going to pay the national debt off in 8 years. Okay. So let's just tell the truth for once. And I know that you're on the religious side, and truth is supposed to be a value for those of us that call ourselves conservatives. But I fear it has not, because all we do is talk about tax cuts that do come, and the tax cuts increase the debt. And that's what we want. What we really want is we want access to the government money, treasury, so we can keep spending on our pet projects. We want to end the subsidies for the other political party, Jeff. That's all we want to do, okay? And my one final statement, and I'm sure everybody will agree with me, okay? Everybody is overpaid except for me. And that's just the real mentality. Everybody is overpaid except for me. And I'm sure we can all agree on that, because I've grown up with that my entire life.
Kevin, Jim, answer this question for me, though. Where's the ceiling on this? If 33 trillion doesn't hurt, let's go to 55 trillion. Why not?
Jeff, here's what we do. We give $10 billion to the next Saddam Hussein. And then we forgive that $10 billion and tell them, just spend the rest of your nation's life paying us the interest on that. That's how it works, Jeff. Nobody wants to balance a damn thing. We just want the government to give us what we deserve. And I'm talking about conservatives. Conservatives deserve the government's money, because it's really ours. And we'll just call it our money, even though that money in our pocket doesn't have our name on it and never will. We need to go digital so we can keep not more millionaires, because everybody's going to be a millionaire. We need to have more billionaires on the planet than anyone else. And I know you're laughing, but it's a losing proposition when everybody around you, Jeff, has decided that they're conservatives and big deficits don't matter. So you're the last one. I called in to convert you, and regardless of what you think, big deficits do not matter. And that's it. Period. Exclamation mark. It's done.
Well, I think Jim has a point. Jim, thanks so much for the call, because it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to matter to Speaker Kevin McCarthy. It didn't seem to matter to Donald Trump. We just kind of ran up that deficit, continue to do it. But here's the question I have, and I don't think Jim answered it. Where's the ceiling? Apparently, there is no ceiling. We can just keep on going, because 33 trillion didn't hurt. 31 trillion didn't hurt. 29 trillion didn't hurt. So is Matt Gaetz out of line? Here's from the Wall Street Journal this morning. From the editorial board, Matt Gaetz, Biden's favorite Republican. A vote to oust Speaker McCarthy would empower Democrats. Kevin McCarthy chose the only option he had on Saturday to avoid a, quote, pointless government shutdown by seeking a bipartisan vote. Pointless government shutdown. He succeeded, but now the GOP Jacobins, who blocked a Republican-only bill, are plotting to oust Mr. McCarthy as House Speaker as soon as this week. Mr. McCarthy had worked until the day before a shutdown deadline to pass a 45-day funding bill that included a spending reduction, money for border security, and a commission on the growing federal debt. Why do we need a commission? My goodness, that's such a government thing to do. We don't just cut the debt. We'll put together a commission to figure out about it. Here's from the article. It wouldn't have passed the Senate, but it would at least have given the House leverage in conference. The GOP rejectionists defeated everything. That left Mr. McCarthy no choice but to seek Democrat votes for a funding bill that included no GOP priorities. Democrats went along rather than be blamed for a shutdown, and good for them for voting yes, despite the bill's failure to include aid for Ukraine. So McCarthy gets the deal done with Democrats. Matt Gaetz frustrated about it. But then I saw this. This was really interesting. This came from Mark Levin, who had some words. The guy who says, this is about Matt Gaetz, the guy who says McCarthy is the Democrat speaker is plotting and scheming with the radical Democrats to take out a Republican speaker who is more conservative than he is. Strong fighting words from Mark Levin. McCarthy backed the Freedom Caucus continuing resolution and the cuts and border security, which Gaetz and the 4 others killed. There are now numerous reports that Gaetz is doing this. So the challenge to McCarthy, he's doing this not because he insists that McCarthy interfered with an ethics investigation of him, which a speaker cannot do and has never done. I might add that after 2 years, it's about time the ethics committee released its report and either lift the cloud over Gaetz or clear him. So Mark Levin with some fighting words on this. Like I said, I think that the government spending issue ultimately to Republicans in Washington, D.C. doesn't seem to make a difference. Would you support ousting McCarthy on this? Are you with Gaetz? Does it really matter? This deficit that we're driving up, these omnibus spending packages, because I've been involved in politics for 20 years and it doesn't seem to ultimately matter. We keep putting in Republicans that drive up deficit. We don't care about it. They promise to. We don't hold them accountable. This was the biggest critique I had about Donald Trump, was that the debt got bigger. The deficit got bigger. The spending got bigger. Are you willing to actually hold these guys accountable to it? And I understand there's a lot of other reasons to put Trump in, to put DeSantis in. There's a lot of issues that we care about, but at the end of the day, these guys keep the problem going. 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text in on the 710 KNUS app. But as Jim said, this is the way it goes. And the challenge I had for Jim was, where's the ceiling? He didn't have an answer for it. He danced around it. There doesn't seem to be a ceiling. You would not run your family budget the same way we run the government. But should we? Jim said no. I think you should run the government this way. Here's what I would like to see for the state of Colorado, because I sit in these committee hearings all the time. The people that run our government are bag boys. They're delivery boys for special interest groups. They do not care about their constituents at all. They are never delivering for their constituents. They're delivering for special interest groups. So we sit down there in these committee hearings where lobbyists, not even the lawmakers themselves, the lobbyists write the bills that they then deliver to the lawmakers, that then pass them. The governor signs them. And these bills are designed to do one thing and one thing only: help the business that paid the lobbyist. So if it gets into building developers, if it gets into abortion providers, it's all the same thing. They use the government to make money for themselves. So here's what I would love to see. I would love to see the state of Colorado elect a governor that says, I'm locking the door. If there's an emergency, call me. But I am not here to manage your lives, run your lives, or deliver for special interest groups that hired lobbyists. That is not my job. Lock the door. I would like to have a legislature that only meets every 2 years. These guys pass 450 bills a year, or at least introduce. They introduce 450 bills a year. We're a state that's been around since 1876. What great new law are they introducing that's actually impacting your life? What critical piece of legislation must be passed out of the 450 or so that are introduced that actually makes a difference in your life? Very few, if any of them. And they too could simply respond to emergencies. They're passing things to drive government money into business. That is what they're doing down at the state capitol. So are you willing to actually fight on this? Are you willing to go up and actually hold Republicans accountable? Would you stand with Matt Gaetz and say that we've got to be willing to get a new speaker in? Or is Matt Gaetz simply distracting? The Wall Street Journal's right. They're creating problems. He's doing this over an ethics investigation, and Speaker McCarthy is just fine. 303-696-1971. Give us a call or text in on the 710 KNUS app. We're up against a commercial break. We'll be right back. We'll continue this conversation. Jeff Hunt filling in for the great George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy. Why should
Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler on this beautiful, sunny October 2nd morning in the Mile High City. Thanks so much for joining us. Hey, Billy, did you ever pull a fire alarm in elementary school or middle school?
Thought about it.
Everybody's thought about it.
Yeah, I didn't actually. And part of it because I didn't think I was going to be able to get away with it. That was really the thing. And there were a couple of reasons for that. One being where the fire alarm sat. But then also they got to the point later on where they had the little bit of, like a vial. And so as you pulled it down, it was going to break stuff, and it's going to get stuff onto your hands. So it was only going to take them a few minutes to figure out who exactly did it. So if I could have convinced somebody else to do it, oh, hell yeah, absolutely.
Every kid ever has always thought about that. And speaking of lawmakers who are idiots, because during the last segment, we talked about how our state legislature is filled with them. Democrat Representative Jamal Bowman acknowledged triggering a fire alarm Saturday in one of the U.S. Capitol office buildings as lawmakers scrambled to pass a bill to fund the government before the midnight shutdown deadline. The fire alarm sounded out around noon in the Cannon House office building and prompted a building-wide evacuation at a time when the House was in session and staffers were working in the building. My wife used to work in Cannon, by the way. The building was reopened an hour later after Capitol Police determined it was not a threat. The GOP-controlled House Administration Committee, which oversees issues pertaining to the Capitol complex, posted a picture of a person pulling the fire alarm who appeared to be Bowman. The New York lawmaker told reporters hours later that it was a mistake and that he was rushing to get to votes and was trying to get through a door that is usually open, but was closed due to it being a weekend. Here's a statement from the congressman. I thought it would help me open the door, he said, about pulling the trigger, denying there was an effort to stall anything. At the time of the evacuation, House Democrats were working to delay a vote on a 45-day funding bill to keep federal agencies open. They said they needed time to review the 71-page bill that Republicans abruptly released to avoid a shutdown. The funding package was ultimately approved 335 to 91 on Saturday afternoon, with most Republicans and almost all Democrats, including Bowman, supporting the bill. In a late-night statement, Bowman said that, quote, I want to be very clear, this was not me in any way trying to delay any vote. It was the exact opposite. I was trying urgently to get to a vote, which I ultimately did, and joined my colleagues in a bipartisan effort to keep our government open, unquote. Bowman said he met with the House Sergeant at Arms and the Capitol Police at their request and explained what had happened. My hope is that no one will make more of this than it was. Okay. Sorry, we are going to make more of it than it was because there's more to be had here. He interrupted a official government proceedings, right? Which in many ways, it's not the same. It's not equivalent. I'm not saying it's equivalent, but it's the charge that's being leveraged against a lot of the January 6th prosecutions. The argument that the left has been making is that essentially interrupting government proceedings is one of the worst possible crimes you can commit as an American, and therefore we're going to hold you accountable to send a message to the entire rest of the world that if you interrupt government proceedings, which is essentially a sacred act, we are going to put you in jail for a very, very long time. So here you have a Democrat lawmaker who, either because he's an idiot and doesn't recognize a fire alarm doesn't open a door. And if you see the picture of the fire alarm, this isn't some special Capitol Hill fire alarm. This is a run-of-the-mill fire alarm that he pulls in order to open a door. So either he's dumb enough to trigger something that interrupts, government proceedings, government actions, or he did this maliciously. This is not a good place for him to be in. Because if he did it maliciously, then he absolutely should be held accountable. You don't just throw January 6th protesters in jail for years and years and years for violating official government proceedings. And granted, if you do that, you should be held accountable, and then allow a Democrat lawmaker off the hook on this. Or he's so dumb that this is the type of person that's writing our laws. In either case, welcome to America, where conservative Republicans are absolutely held into account for certain things, but, Democrat lawmakers will let you empty an entire building and will still allow you to continue to lead our government. My goodness, that is the state that we're in right now. All right. Did you see the Democrats are trying to bring back, once again, considering a law to allow safe injection centers in the state after their previous effort failed? I'm going to get to this in just a second. Neil, line 1, Wheat Ridge. Did you pull a fire alarm as a kid?
No, and the only time I've seen it done on mistake was a 4-year-old boy at our church. Otherwise, you have to know what it is you're reaching for. There's no way this congressperson, and I use it lightly, but there's no way he could not have known it was not a fire alarm. I mean, it's staring you right in the face.
Right.
It's shaped like a fire alarm. It doesn't look like a door handle. And what gets me is the Democrats, if a conservative had done that, they'd be all over. But because it's one of their own, it had to have been a mistake. It's like two faces looking at the same thing.
The guy was a school principal before this. Did you know that, Neil?
Yeah, I read about that.
So he's been around schools his entire career. Everybody knows what the fire alarm is. Here's what some just resort and some just desserts on this. But I don't want to do this because I don't want to burden fire departments on this. But if kids all around America were pulling fire alarms and just claiming they thought it opened doors, I think maybe we could send a message of how stupid the excuse is, right? Because you can't just claim that. I pulled a fire alarm and thought it would open a door. By the way, there's no consequences for my actions. If you were a kid in a school doing this that pulled the fire alarm and then as a result, fire departments all over the country were having to respond to this, you would get in trouble. You would get in very serious trouble for this.
The 4-year-old I talked about that did that, I mean, he was already upset. And the fireman that came, he wanted to make a point. I think he was overboard in it, but he gave that kid the riot act. And this was a 4-year-old boy. So there's no way that Bowman should have just walked away with an excuse of, it was an accident. There's no way. And he should be called out for it.
Do you think House Republicans should go even further? I mean, look at the January 6th protesters are being brought up on charges that, and this is one of many charges, right? Some of them hit cops. That's totally unacceptable. But one of the litany of charges that they're being brought up on is that you interrupted official government proceedings. Okay.
Right.
And
that,
I
don't mean it, and it shouldn't be tit for tat. The fact that it happened, even if J6 had never been an issue, the fact that it happened, it should still be dialogued about.
And it seems like we're just going to kind of allow this to move on and let it be a news item of previous days. I think that's unfortunate.
Well, mainstream media won't push it. They don't even talk about it.
No.
And, AOC is the biggest mouthpiece up there. And she's already saying that, that was a mistake. She wouldn't be saying that if, say, Matt Gaetz had done it.
Right.
Like
right. Absolutely. No, there would be congressional hearings, there'd be investigations, all that stuff. Neil, I got to ask you, do you support Matt Gaetz in challenging Speaker McCarthy?
Yeah, I kind of do. I think that this whole thing is going on too long, and I think that there has to be a little more happening with the way the budget is being pushed without any reading of it. They're complaining about this 71 pages they had to read. Well, you know what? Back in 2010, they shoved Obamacare on us, and nobody read a thing.
We got it. Well, they had to pass it to find out what's in it. That's always good lawmaking.
Yeah, well,
but why do you think he should be removed for this? Do you think this is the reason? The debt reason is the actual reason?
I don't know if it should be removed as much as there should be some kind of reminder to him of why he's there.
Why do you think he's there?
Well, I'm hoping it's for Americans as a whole, but sometimes I wonder.
Neil, do you think that there's anything we can ever do to really address this debt? I mean, I asked a previous caller this. He kind of came to the conclusion that this thing is just going to continue to grow. 33 trillion.
Well,
we've had 31 trillion. We've had 29 trillion. What's the difference? Where's the harm? Why not shoot this thing to 50 trillion, baby?
Well, that's just it. I don't know that we'll ever really get it resolved as long as they can continue to print money the way they do.
Do you think it's going to collapse? I think it's going to collapse at some point. I think at some point people aren't going to buy our debt anymore. The economy is going to eventually run out. Collapse. I don't think you can continue to do just unrestricted kind of spending debt problems.
No, you can't. Somebody's paying for it, and eventually somebody isn't going to have it to pay for it anyway. So
right.
I think I don't know that I want to reset, but because their idea of a reset would really be harmful. But
do you think?
I'm not an expert on this, and I'll be honest about it. So
no, you're a voter. You're a citizen of the United States of America. Yeah. Your opinion matters. But would you support a government shutdown? I'm not that opposed to it. The only thing that concerns me is the payment that people that are working for the federal government deserve. But there's so much other money we spend out of this government that I kind of go, I don't know if it'd be that bad.
Well, if a government shutdown would end some payments to some things like, let's say Ukraine, because right now I don't think that's a necessity. Yes, they need to be protected, but we're paying more than NATO does. NATO doesn't get involved the way we do, and I think we're crossing a line that nobody else has taken a commitment to do, and we've got enough issues in our own country. A lot of that could be going to putting border protection.
Right.
A lot of that military could be going to the border instead of over there. So
I think spending would be more palatable to conservatives if it was America first spending, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're really addressing the border, we're going to shut that down. Neil, by the way, thanks for the call. I think conservatives would be more open to that. But listen, and I had debates all weekend over this with other conservatives. When it comes to Ukraine, I understand that we've got to stop Putin, right? I get it. That guy will march all the way to Poland, and it's become a bigger issue. And I get the idea of confronting Putin in Ukraine, okay? But listen, guys, we have spent the last 20 years spending a ton of money in Afghanistan and Iraq. And the minute we left, within 3 days, Afghanistan resorted back to kicking girls out of schools. All right? And if you miss that, you miss the fact that we went through that. And conservatives are looking at all this going, we lost treasure and we lost blood in these foreign countries, and I don't know what we got out of it. What did America get out of it? 20 years. And was it necessary to withdraw? Could we have kept 2,000 troops in Afghanistan, keep it a little bit like South Korea? We keep troops there. That keeps North Korea from advancing. It's not that big of an expenditure. But to just completely withdraw and watch that whole thing fall. I remember I was a passionate advocate about this, guys. I wrote in my graduate newspaper about this, that going to war in Iraq and Afghanistan was the right thing. And now after 20 years and watching it fall and watching personal friends die, spill blood on that soil, and now we're going to continue to spend money in massive amounts in foreign policy and our borders wide open. And you wonder why conservatives are skeptical of these omnibus spending packages where money's just going out the door while our country's suffering? That's legitimate. That's real. So I don't know. We started with pulling a fire alarm and we're back to federal government spending. We're up against a commercial break. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. When we come back, guys, I'm going to update you on what's going to happen here in the state of Colorado, especially this upcoming legislative session. They're going to try to bring the safe injection sites back. And next year, Democrats are now seeking signatures for a ballot initiative to get rid of Amendment 3 in our Constitution, which would allow taxpayer funding for abortions. Welcome to the new state of Colorado. All right, we'll get this and more when we come back. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Jeff Hunt filling in for the great George Brauchler on this beautiful Monday morning, October 2nd. It's been wonderful to be with you all. Now listen to this. It's coming back because our state's run by radical leftists. Why not? Colorado legislators are once again considering a bill to allow safe injection sites. The legislators' interim opioid committee. By the way, can we just come to the fact that they haven't been effective at all in addressing opioids in the state of Colorado? This stuff's just getting worse and worse. But hey, they put together a committee. They released the first draft of a new bill on Monday. Members of the committee will vote on October 30th whether to advance the bill to the Legislative Council Committee, where it will be introduced to the full state legislature for consideration in 2024. So if you remember what these safe injection sites are, they're making the argument that people are overdosing in the streets. Horrible thing. They're dying in the streets, so let's create a place where they can at least get help if they take too much drugs. Now, you may not remember this. These superheroes united. Stephen Tubbs, Peter Boyles, and they went to Vancouver to check out the safe injection sites there to see if they were actually doing what they promised, right? Harm reduction. We're going to reduce the harm that's taking place not only to the people that are suffering from drug addiction, but the communities themselves. So KNUS, the great superheroes, fly on up to Vancouver. They record what's happening up there. And of course, what they see is that the exact opposite is taking place. This is just fueling drug addiction. It's not actually helping anybody. And I remember when this first popped up, I challenged the city councilman to this. I said, what's the pathway to actually doing what we all want, which is that people are off drugs? That's the end goal, right? Well, at least they're not dying. That's the end goal with you guys? That they're not dying in a ditch somewhere? That's not my end goal. My end goal is that these people are free of drug addiction. Have you ever noticed that that's not the end goal of the left in all this? They're not actually seeking to do that, because to do that would require personal responsibility. Now, guys, we've had Step Denver on, Denver Rescue Mission, all those people, Catholic Charities, the actual people that serve those that are addicted to drugs. And they will all say the same thing. You will never get them out of homelessness, never get them out of poverty until they address the actual problem, which is drug addiction. I was with Mike Kaufman recently. You remember when Mike did this, when he went and lived as a homeless guy between Thanksgiving and Christmas? It was during the pandemic, 2020. And he actually went out there and lived and went to the shelters and actually experienced homelessness. I thought this was brilliant. This was one of the best moments that any elected official has done. I'm a big fan of Mike Kaufman. I think he cares more about constituents than just about any other elected official I've ever met. It's like his life is caring for constituents. But he goes out there, lives as a homeless man. He comes back, he says, it's all drug addiction. It's not a lack of food. There's people bringing food by all the time. In fact, what we have done is create a system where people can just live drug addicted. Food is provided for them. Now housing's provided to them. Thank you, Mike Johnston. But we're never actually addressing the issue. So now Democrats, in their ultimate vision and wisdom and brilliance, are deciding they want to bring back these safe injection sites, which just creates a center by which people are doing more and more drugs because they know they're not going to die. So they can do it safely here. They don't actually get the help they need, which is being confronted with the fact that they have addiction problems. That is the help that they need. Hey, John, you need to get off the drugs. And I know it's hard, and we're here to help you, and we're not going to make it cold turkey, although I think that's probably the best viable process for them, but we're going to take you down off this process. We'll hold you accountable. We're going to help you get a job. We're going to help you rebuild your life, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's it's a personality life issue that you've got to address. And if you're not going to be responsible, you're not going to show up on time, you're not going to take responsibility for your own life, why is it the government's job to fuel that destructive, drug-addicted lifestyle? And I'm going to take this to another level, because you all know this. You all know that Gavin Newsom wants to be the president of the United States. Do you guys know what Gavin's history was? Mayor of San Francisco, governor of Colorado, or of California. Thank God. Although it's not much better here. And now wants to be the president of the United States. Destruction, destruction, destruction. We do not hold these folks accountable. This was the biggest heartbreak I had after this last election. And I've won elections. I've worked on teams that have won elections. I've worked on teams that have lost elections. I could not crawl out of the funk with regards to this last election, because what I saw out of the electorate in Colorado is what you see out of the electorate in California, is that these lawmakers, the leadership of these cities and the state of Colorado, that have driven us into a ditch where you have open drug use, where you have homelessness growing. Guys, any other person that proposed ideas that would result in this much human suffering would be voted out of office. And what did the electorate of Colorado do? They doubled down. It was the first time my heart has really broken for the state of Colorado, because they doubled down on these guys and they gave them more power and said, go at it. And so you get this stuff, this type of baloney here. We're going to now bring back this idea of safe injection sites. They can't solve this problem at all. They're going to try it again. By the way, we're up just against the break here, but I'm going to give you a brief update. What they're doing on abortion is shocking, guys. It's shocking. They have turned this state into an absolute festering hellhole for abortion. We used to be at 3,000 abortions a year. We're now at 15,000 abortions a year. They have decided they're going to take away the option and the right to reverse abortions. Did you know that was an option? It's medicine that's being developed. They are taking that away, not because it's a threat to the women taking this drug that can reverse the chemical abortion. No, but because they want you to finish it. And in 2024, they're gathering signatures now. So if you see this out there, you got to decline to sign. They're gathering signatures to strip away the prohibition in our Constitution against government funding of abortion. So they want you to pay for it. You, taxpayers, are going to be paying for this. This is why when I see the national Democrats go, oh, we don't support late-term abortions. That's crazy. That's crazy. Guys, not only have they allowed that in the state of Colorado, they're taking away the right to reverse it. They've gone after and tried to prosecute these crisis pregnancy centers that are providing women alternatives to abortion. And now they're going to make you fund it with your taxpayer dollars. Welcome to the state of Colorado. We've got to fight back. The greatest institution, the voice, pushing back on all of this is 710 KNUS. They're great hosts. Everybody from Randy to Stefan to Deborah to George, the whole lineup. Jimmy, they're all great. This is the voice of the great Colorado pushback. So stay connected with 710 KNUS. Charlie Kirk, my good friend, is up next. So stick around, listen to him. It's been wonderful to fill in for George Brauchler. This is Jeff Hunt on 710 KNUS signing off. God bless you all, and yeehaw.